Class is in session, hitting the books, the college football betting show, Monday, November the 25th. It is the U.S. Thanksgiving week, feast week, holiday week, whatever you want to call it. And for years, it's been rivalry week in college football. Some of these rivalries happened earlier than the year, but there's still a lot of rivalry games this week in college football. And this is the final week of the regular season. We're going to get everything decided pretty much as far as who's going to be in the conference championship games. We're going to get more clarity as far as the college football playoff picture. Just briefly, C-Mac, before we get into this loaded slate for this week, what chaos was a phrase that the great Doc Emmerich, the great NHL broadcaster, uttered a lot during a hockey game? What chaos to describe when there was a ton of scoring chances? In college football, what chaos describes what the fuck we saw on Saturday? It was nuts. Ole Miss goes down to Florida. Alabama goes down in blowout fashion to Oklahoma. I mean, it was just Boise State escaped by the skin of their teeth against Wyoming. I mean, we saw just all kinds of crazy, stunning results. Colorado goes down to Kansas. I mean, it goes on and on and on with just the teams that really needed victories to solidify their playoff hopes go down to defeat, and that has thrown the entire college football playoff seeding and matchup scenarios into a bit of, like I said, chaos going into this final week, but it makes for exciting games with a lot on the line and a lot at stake, C-Mac, coming up this week.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love it, especially how different the SEC is.
A&M, there's another one, losing to Auburn in a crazy-ass overtime game.
Yeah, for them to just get slapped so early, then come all the way back, and then lose it, and the guy just drops it. It was awful. Yep. But yeah, it's really shaken up where, man, there's teams that now are alive. A bunch of teams that have 3 losses that have kind of been out. It's just, it's going on. Penn State barely hung on to the win. Bama just not, just a no-show. Milroe, horrible. I mean, we'll get to it all, but just wild.
How bad does Brian Kelly look? He couldn't stop. He didn't have a fucking clue how to slow down Jalen Milroe in Alabama running the football a few weeks ago, and they can't do a thing in that run game with the quarterback against Oklahoma on Saturday night. That makes him look even worse, quite honestly, Brian Kelly with that. All right, let's get into this massive slate. We've got tons of games this week, so we will do our best to hustle this show along as best we can. And there's going to be some games where I just have very little opinion on it, like this game, to get things going here. Action on Tuesday night, Kent State and Buffalo. We got Buffalo 21-point home favorites, 49 being the total here in this game. Buffalo's 7-4, so if they win, they get to they're already in a bowl game. It's just maybe you go to a slightly better bowl game. Kent State's trying to play for not finishing the season winless at 0-12, but I don't think they're good enough to do it. That's why they're a 3-touchdown underdog here. They get blown out by Akron 38. So the last time I tried to talk myself into Kent State and taking the points, and I almost did last week, 10.5-point dogs, they lose 38-17 to Akron. So even getting all these points makes it appealing to take Kent, but they're just so far gone and how awful they are. Ulatowski ain't it. They don't run the football very well. Turnovers continue to plague this football team as well. I mean, it was all that, and their defense is miserable. I mean, they gave up somehow over 500 yards of offense, 28-9 first downs for Akron over Kent State. It shows you how bad they are right now. But do you want to lay 21 with Buffalo? Ends up being the question. Buffalo did beat Eastern Michigan 37-20. We'll see how they fare here in this one. I don't believe they've been a favorite of this magnitude very often this year. No, and the last time they were favored at home against Ball State, they only won by 3. I don't know. To me, Buffalo's flying over the total. I don't trust their defense, but you trust Kent State's offense to do anything against it. So I don't know. This is a stay off for me. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to get involved here. One thing when I looked at this game, I think if you take Buffalo instead of laying the 21, I mean, could they win here by over 3 touchdowns? Sure. One thing they've consistently done the last few weeks, against teams a little bit better, it's just flat out, let's just say it, than Kent State, is get to 40. I mean, their team total is what, 34.5? I would just take that over 34.5. If you think they get to 35 points, which I think they can in this game, that's 5 touchdowns. just do that instead of laying the 21. Ulatowski, yeah, we've gone through him week by week. I mean, he had 220. I mean, he might, maybe Kent State can score a little bit. It's just tough to trust him. They're just, the numbers on the offensive side are just, horrible, but they're even worse. They're basically the worst defensive team in all college football, or they're just right there in almost every category. So, yeah, not easy. I would just look that Buffalo team. And if Kent State could score a little bit, this game maybe could get over. What was the of course it's going to be cold.
Yep.
Yeah, 49. A little wind here, 15 miles. I just want to check the weather on these quick midweek games since they will be tomorrow. So a little bit of wind here in this game at 15 miles an hour. Keep that in mind tomorrow.
And as expected, because of the fact looks like we're going to see some wind here, the total has been bet down, and usually you're going to see that when there's wind.
Still,
in the forecast.
I have to say, Buffalo, even though they're not big at running, they've been able to throw it a little bit better.
Yep.
I think they could do what they want here. I mean, like I said, I think they could get to 35.
They can run, they can throw against this defense. I agree. I mean, they haven't put resistance. If they can't put resistance defensively up against fucking Akron, who can they put resistance up against? Probably nobody. This Kent State defense. All right, Toledo and Akron. This is the other game on Tuesday night in Maction. Toledo 8-point road favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. I think situationally, I'm cool with taking Akron here +8, +8.5. I think it was a dream crusher loss for Toledo last week, 24-7 against Ohio. I faded Toledo last week, took Ohio plus the small number. I thought they were the better team. They got the job done on the road at Toledo, and that basically ended any chance of Toledo winning the MAC. They had to win that game to stay alive in the MAC championship hunt. They are out now. So now you go on the road, meaningless finale. You're already bowl eligible. So what? You're playing for what? Maybe a slightly better bowl game? I don't think the kids give two shits about that. What they cared about was a MAC championship berth, and now that's not going to happen for the Toledo Rockets. Meanwhile, Akron's not very good, but, last game against Kent, they won 38-17, won and covered, albeit against a very bad team. And before that, against NIU, pretty good Northern Illinois team, solid MAC team. They lost by 13. They covered the number. In defeat on the road. Now they're back home for this home finale. And like I said, I really, truly worry about where Toledo is going to bring the focus here or not. Following that game last week against Ohio, which they had to win, they didn't. Now they're out of the MAC championship game. I don't trust them psychologically laying 8 on the road here after getting knocked out of the MAC championship game title picture. So situationals point to Akron. The question is, are they going to be good enough on the football field to keep it within one score, because there is still a wide gap in talent between these two teams. But I still lean Akron here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is the type of game, like, just because everything that you kind of hit on, they really don't have anything to play for. Yep. I mean, just winning another game, but I really changes that they're going to upper echelon bowl game. So, yeah, I think Akron, take them here with the points. I don't know. It's just, was one that I don't want. For the most part, we talked about it last week. It was a smaller bet for me, not as crazy. Ohio was just playing the better football. And you know me, I haven't wanted to back Toledo at all. And so what I've been saying that, I'm like, what's going to make me want to back them now when they have nothing to play for? Better team. Of course, they have the better defense. Akron showed a little bit, lately. And they are and it showed in last week's score, a little notch above Kent State, who's just at the bottom, bottom feeder. So I think they'll at least be willing to play in their finale here at home. But I could see them losing by 2 touchdowns too. At times they've gotten killed by this team in years past, has Akron. So yeah, I lean Akron. I take the 8 or nothing, but probably something I'm not going to get involved with.
Yeah, I mean,
little wind here too. A little better weather though. Better weather.
We have 2 examples of Toledo laying points on the road, by the way, here in Maction this year. At Buffalo, they lost outright as 10.5-point road favorites at Buffalo, 30-15.
Yeah, I was on Buffalo.
One of the games do you want to know why they're not in the MAC championship picture anymore? Losing as a double-digit road favorite at Buffalo is one of those costly losses for Toledo earlier this year.
Yes. And Eastern Michigan.
At Eastern Michigan, -10, they won by a point. They escaped with a 1-point victory. Yeah. You know
what this should be? Vano, just make me feel a little bit better. Hey, they lost, got their ass kicked and won by 1, but they are the better team. This should be 10.5. This is pretty sharp line, I think. Like, I think we'd be catching value if we had, 10.5 or so. Then I'd be a lot more intrigued with Akron on taking them.
Toledo's got a really good off. They'll still move the ball on Akron with Gleason, but they've been bending, but not. You just hope this is a game where they bend but don't break. There's been games where they've been totally breaking defensively, Akron, and then there's games like last week against Northern Illinois where they actually hung in there defensively. They bent, but they didn't break, and that's why they covered the number. If they do that here, they might be able to as well. Hopefully, you get the good Ben Finley as well at quarterback for Akron, because he can be a little bit up and down, a little bit erratic. All right, so that's Tuesday night in Maction. There's no games Wednesday. We move to Thursday, where we've got Memphis and Tulane, AAC action. Tulane 14-point home favorites, 55.5 the total. I think from a situational perspective, it's probably you have to lean Memphis at the very least, plus 14 in this game. This is only the second time Memphis has been an underdog this entire season. The only other time was at Florida State when they were an underdog and they won that game outright against the Seminoles. Now, the Seminoles are a very bad football team. We know that. And Tulane's probably a tougher opponent. Not maybe. They are a tougher opponent for Memphis than Florida State was. But for Tulane, and they're a much better team, and Tulane's offense against that Memphis defense, which hasn't been good down the stretch here, like Mensa and company could chew up that Memphis defense here. That's the concern. But if you're Tulane situationally, you've got the AAC championship game next week. You're already in it against Army. We already know that's going to be the AAC championship game next week. Are you really going to go full bore if you're John Summerall and this Green Wave squad in this kind of a meaningless game, quite honestly, because it's the AAC championship game that matters next week against Army. Win or lose is not going to affect them one bit here in this game. Now, it is their final home game. I think this would be a better bet against Tulane if they were on the road at Memphis for this game. But they are at home, final regular season home game, senior night, the whole deal. Maybe that has Tulane focused, and they're certainly good enough to win by 2 touchdowns or more. But I still think I have to lean Memphis. I lean over as well. And keep in mind, even though Tulane is 3-1 the last 4 meetings against Memphis, none of those victories have been by more than 2 touchdowns. All of them have been 14 points or less, the margin of victory for Tulane in those games. So I got to lean Memphis, but the problem is I don't love this team. I definitely don't love them defensively. They're good on offense. Hennigan, Mario Anderson's a great running back for them. They're a great offensive team, but as usual, they're a suspect defensive team. And it is still a big coaching advantage, in my opinion, C-Mac. I'll take John Summerall every day of the week, including Sunday, over Silverfield for Memphis, who I don't think has done a great job with this program, quite honestly. What do you think here, C-Mac? Memphis, Tulane.
Yeah, they're just better coached, and they're better on both sides of the ball. They're just more balanced, Tulane on offense, and this defense has been good. I mean, 9 points the last 3 weeks. I know it's Charlotte, Temple, and Navy, but still Navy shut them out, 6-3. It's been very, very, very good. Even Rice has played a little bit more unders. They only gave up 10 points in that one. This is what we talk about for years. Babano, you already hit on it. Memphis playing all these bad teams, favorites all the time. Never lay points with them. Take them when they've been a dog. They've been pretty good. When they've had points in the last 2 or 3 years, they've cashed. I already hit on the Florida State, which is really rough here, but I think this is too many. Not at 2 touchdowns. I think it's too much. I think Hennigan can hang around, and Memphis defense looks better now. It's both these teams play some really bad football teams. Do you know what I mean? Like, the rushing numbers for Memphis' defense has been pretty good. If you look at it, 17 overall, 108 yards, but Tulane, like you were talking about, could just run all over them. But I think 2 touchdowns is too much. I think Memphis, after I rag on them and want to fade them all the time as a favorite because they don't cover, give me them as a 2 touchdown dog here.
I mean, situationally, it couldn't line up better for Memphis because of the fact, is Tulane really going to go all out, full gusto here with the AAC championship game already locked in for next week against Army? And keep in mind, that's triple option. And that Army, say what you will about how they got shelled by Notre Dame, it's still tough to practice and prep for them. And is John Summerall already practicing this week leading up to this Memphis game? Is he already focusing on Army? I would think so. and probably putting a lot of practice time in on Army for the AAC championship game, maybe not as much on Memphis here for this week. It's definitely something to factor into the handicapping equation here when it comes to this game for Thursday night. All right, let's go to Friday. This is Black Friday. After you've all been feasting on turkey and NFL football on Thursday, you get to tune in for some college football on Friday. A ton of games, as always, the day after Thanksgiving on that Friday. And we start in the MAC yet again. MACtion, Ball State, Ohio. Got Ohio 15.5-point home favorites, 52.5 the total here in this game. Ohio, one of multiple teams, one of 4 teams still in the hunt to be in the MAC championship game. All the Bobcats have to do is win. Just win, baby, the old Al Davis quote. You win this game against Ball State, and they will be in the MAC championship game, and they would take on the winner, and we'll get to it, the next game on our slate. It's basically a win and you're in the MAC championship game, lose and you're not, between Miami O and Bowling Green, which we'll get to in just a moment, which is a great game. Looking forward to that. Ohio should win this game at home, Peden Stadium here in Athens, Ohio. Navarro and company, Tyus the running back. I mean, Ball State's defense just isn't very good, hasn't been very good all year. We continue to see that week in and week out. But Ball State has been a feisty dog until last week. They met their match against Bowling Green. They lost 38-13. Just got totally outclassed in that matchup. Samanza, who's been pretty good, kind of struggled more at the quarterback spot for Ball State in that game. And Ohio is in that same class right now. 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. They've been rolling. I don't know if I want to step in front of Ohio, but prior to last week, Ball State had been a covering machine, ATS, as an underdog. But the one non-cover CMAC last week was against Bowling Green, a team that's right there with Ohio as one of the best teams in the MAC. So I don't know if, they've been good as a dog, but the one game, like the best team they played during this run, Ball State, they lose by 25. I don't know if I want to step in front of an Ohio team at home playing to win to get in the MAC championship game, but they just have to win. They don't have to win by 16 or more. I don't think I'll bet the game. Ball State's been a good dog, but I don't trust them stepping up in class, much like last week against Bowling Green. Samanza and the offense bogged down, and the defense just got ripped by Bowling Green in that game, and Ohio's got a pretty damn good offense. So we'll see. Maybe over 52.5. Maybe I'll lean that way here. Sidewise, kind of tough for me. Ohio must win. Doesn't always equal will win, and it doesn't always equal will cover, especially laying 15.5. But they have the chance to totally maybe outclass Ball State the way Bowling Green did last week. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, total-wise, Ball State has been a pretty good over team all year long. If they scored just another touchdown, that game would have went over. And, they just got their ass kicked in the third quarter, second half. I mean, it was a 10-7 game at halftime against Bowling Green. And, teams like this, just with a bad defense, sometimes it just – that's what happens. And you can't catch up. And they couldn't – Navarro should have plenty of success. And this Ohio offense running on them. Ball State gives up almost 170, I think, where they get 166. So they're going to get beat up here. Yeah, Ball State's been great as the dog, but this Ohio team's just clicking right now. You know what I mean? This was tough for me. I think Ohio wins. One thing with them, they've covered some numbers. I mean, last week they were that small dog and just better, but 10.5, 20.5, they shut them out, and their defense is just like if they hold Ball State can't score. They're covering this. They win 31-7 type game, 31-10. So I kind of lean to Ohio. It's just, me, for the most part. In the MAC, I'm not laying 2 touchdowns, even with Ohio team that's playing great football. Like, it's not my favorite fucking bets to make.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And again, they're totally fine with winning this game by 2 points or 8 points or 7 or 6. They don't have to win it, but they just have to win. And they're in the MAC championship game next week.
Maybe first half. I don't like. Maybe they, come out pound Ball State. Ball State at times feisty and kind of got their ass kicked. Like, I know it was at home, but I saw a lot of that. Those 2 games in Miami, Ohio, and Northern Illinois. I mean, those games were tight.
Yep.
A little bit different on the road, and they're one of the classic, as all these MAC teams are. Pretty good at home, dog shit on the road. Yeah, 1-5 Ball State. Just kind of a different team.
Yep, there's definitely been some examples of home road dichotomy, certainly in this conference. This is essentially a play-in game to the MAC championship, so I can't wait to watch it this next game. Miami, Ohio, Redhawks, Bowling Green Falcons. Bowling Green, 2.5-point home favorites. They get this critical game at home, 41.5, 42 actually is the total here in this game. This is a Bowling Green team that I was very confident in, could have a chance to get to the MAC championship game this year. 3-2 at home. Keep in mind Miami 5-1 there in on their home field, but just 2-3 on the road this year. Miami and we saw them lose at Toledo in the toughest road game they've had in the MAC, and their other two road games, CMAC, Ball State and Eastern Michigan. So they haven't played many great teams in this conference on the road, and the one team they did was Toledo, and they lost. Well, Bowling Green already beat Toledo in Toledo. Miami lost to that Toledo team in Toledo. I like Bowling Green here. Anything less than a few. I think they're the better team. I think quarterback matchup's pretty even. Gabbert, when he's on, can be very good, but Basilak's had a terrific year. I think defense, both teams are very capable there, no question. I think Bowling Green is starting to really get their defense back on track. They showed a little bit of vulnerability there in a few games in early October, late September. But I think they're starting to get their defense rolling again, which is good to see. Look, Miami, 6 straight wins, red hot. That's why they've got a chance to be in the MAC championship game with a win here. But I'm not abandoning ship on Bowling Green and Scott Leffler's team here with Bowling Green. I think they've been I still think they're the best team on paper in this conference, and I think they punched their ticket. I didn't know if I'd be able to lay less than a field goal with them. Part of me thought maybe Bowling Green, they'd make it 3.5, 4, but they didn't. We've got below the key number of 3 here with them. Bowling Green for me. I'm sticking with them. CMAC, what do you think?
Shout out to our guy, Ron Crawford. Old D, my man, great to see you up in here. Ron was on Auburn. Yeah, wild game. Wild finish. That was insane, that game. I can't take Bowling Green as much as I love them here, Babano. 2.5. It seems just like even at home, a little sucker bet at this number with them. This game's got some wind. This is one that they're hovering around 20-mile-an-hour wind, and it makes me lean to this under. Not a lot of wiggle room. When we start get down to these, I really gotta love it. But both these defenses have been excellent. I mean, that's why they're both 7-4. So even with this number and the weather, I lean to the under. I think we get kind of a dogfight where both defenses have been pretty good. The last couple, Miami, Ohio, too, beat them down last year, 27-0. They were at home there, and the year before that, Bowling Green won 17-13. I just see, low scoring, good football. So, I like the under in this game. This is one where the 44.5, I'd love it a lot more, but I still think at this number it can stay down. And I kind of lean Miami, Ohio. Not a ton of faith on them, but when you have a defense like that and just the collective how this team's been around for forever, you know what I mean, that this game will be good.
They won their MAC championship last year. It's Bowling Green's time, God damn it. Hopefully that's the case here.
I hope they win. Yeah,
I hope so too. Look, but no, I respect.
I don't. Like I said, I'm not betting it, so get it.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I got more importantly, I'm only gonna have a small bet on the game. More importantly, I got the big future on them to win the MAC, and that's riding on this.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Them winning it. Now, Bowling Green can get in if they lose, but they'd have to have like Ball State beat Ohio, and that's probably not.
Yeah, happening. They need all that weird.
Miami,
shit.
if they lose, would need Ohio to lose to Ball State as well, but they'd also need Buffalo to lose to Kent State, and that's probably not happening. So, bottom line is just win. Either of these teams do that, they are in. They don't have to worry about probably the very unlikely happening in the other games. All right, next up, we've got Oklahoma State and Colorado on Friday. Big 12 action. Colorado 17-point home favorites, 65 the total in this one. I mean, certainly this could be an utter blowout. And I don't know if that loss to Kansas is going to be a reverberating effect on this game. I think Dion can get the troops back up and pumped up for this game. Even though their Big 12 championship and playoff hopes took a hit, they are still alive. I mean, the Big 12's a mess, but they are one of 4 teams still alive. To be in the Big 12 championship game and be in the playoff. Arizona State, Iowa State won't be in the playoff, but Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, and Iowa State, they're all alive for the Big 12 championship. And apparently, if all four, there's so many scenarios, it's just so you scramble your brains trying to figure it all out. I'll just keep it simple. If Arizona State and Iowa State take care of business this week, those are the teams that control their destiny. And it would be an Arizona State, Iowa State Big 12 championship game. They're the teams that control their fate. BYU needs to win and get help. And Colorado needs to win and get help in order to get into the Big 12 championship game. So, yes, Colorado is still alive. They have to win this, and then they need some help from other teams. But certainly, there's zero chance if they lose this game. But is Oklahoma State capable? Now, they did show me, at least offensively, they showed me a pulse coming out of the bye week, which we talked about last week. Were they going to show some life finally? Well, offensively, they were good. This Maluaki Smith, Maluaki, is how you pronounce it. Maluaki Smith, who played at quarterback, believe it or not, where's this guy been all year? My goodness, 26 of 36, 326 passing yards. He was very solid for them throwing that football. Ollie Gordon, where's he been all year? He showed up finally. 156 rushing yards for Oklahoma State, 32 first downs. They were pretty much even in yardage with Texas Tech. They score 48 points. The problem is they give up 56, and they lose, and they fail to cover because that defense, again, is just beyond horrendous, beyond horrific right now for Mike Gundy. And that's the concern here. I mean, when Baron Morton's ripping you up for 366 through the air, and 404 total passing yards for Texas Tech last week against Oklahoma State. What on earth is Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and LeJontay Wester and Jimmy Horn Jr. and all these great receivers? What the hell are they going to do to this secondary of the Oklahoma State Cowboys? So I think Colorado team total, even though I know it's going to be a huge number, they probably go over that team total here in this game. Full game over, perhaps, too. I could see it. That's definitely the lean here for me. C-Mac, what do you think? Oklahoma State, Colorado.
They could definitely get there. The way we talked about last week.
And that's the worst part of that defense, the pass defense for Oklahoma State. And that's obviously the strength of Colorado. So it's a perfect matchup.
Yeah. I mean, 40 is there. I mean, 42, 38, 30, 38, 42, 38, 56 last week. So it's going to be right around there, especially back at home after the bad loss. One thing, if Oklahoma State can do it, both these defenses are horrible. One thing, Daniels was just okay, and that's like what they probably want from Kansas all year. They ran for 340 yards on all over Colorado. It was handed off and gashed the whole game. Ken Gordon, who's a down year, had a better game. That's kind of a bad defense last week in Texas Tech. Can they get going with that? Because, man,
because
that was just they got tore up. And that was a bad spot. Colorado hadn't really played anyone on the road, and Kansas, since that, has flipped the script a little bit. So that was dangerous, and the line showed it last week. This is probably a good bounce back. But, yeah, I'd look at their team total or something like that. I mean, they might cover this. 17. And what's the psyche of it? I mean, the season's been way gone. They keep losing. They're 3-8. You got any fight here, in Boulder? I don't know.
That's the big question. Do they have that fight in them? We'll have to see. And even if they do have that fight in them, that's a lousy secondary. And that's the kind of secondary that Colorado can eat up for lunch and dinner combined.
Hunter should have a field day, Sanders.
Yeah, no doubt. Minnesota and Wisconsin, Big Ten action on Friday. We've got Wisconsin 2-point home favorites, 43 the total in this game. The only question I have here is that's a heartbreaking loss for Minnesota. Gave it their all against Penn State at home. And I know row the boat from PJ Fleck. Well, hopefully some of your players didn't fall off the boat and didn't get back on it for this game, because that's my concern. It was just they left it all out there on the field last week. And a tough loss to Penn State. Can you answer back here against Wisconsin? Because I kind of want to take Minnesota. Like they're playing their best football of the season right now. 4-2 straight up. How about 6-1 against the spread down the stretch in their last 7 games? Their defense has played better. Even their offense, I think we've seen definite improvement in Brosmer throughout the season as far as the offense is concerned. And obviously, we know they've got a solid running back in Darius Taylor. The question is, can they get the run game going here against Wisconsin? They might be able to. This has not been that same Wisconsin run defense this year. 91st, giving up over 163 rushing yards per game. So matchup-wise, I think Minnesota can do a lot of good things here. My only question is the psyche. Can P.J. Fleck rally his team to bring another great effort? If they do, they can win this game on the road against Wisconsin. I'm not enamored with Wisconsin right now. Obviously, they had the tough game against Oregon, and then they got absolutely whipped, and that's what I was concerned about against Nebraska, that coming off the Oregon game where they battled right down to the wire with the Ducks and they lost at the end, that they would just be ripe for getting blown out by Nebraska last week, and that's exactly what happened to the Badgers. And Braden Locke is still, a work in progress, to say the least, at the quarterback spot for them. And can they get their run game going is a big question. They weren't able to last week against Nebraska. So I do lean Minnesota as a dog here. The only question is, can P.J. Fleck get everybody on the same page and get them fired up again after just a really, really tough pill to swallow? Heartbreaker last week against Penn State. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, I was kind of kicking myself. I wasn't on them. I looked at them. Penn State just had kind of beat up on even teams like that and covered with Franklin the last 4 or 5 years. But Minnesota 8-2, ATS. Wisconsin too. Hats off to Nebraska. I don't know if we have it. We have them coming up. We'll get to played a great game. I mean, for not beating Wisconsin in 14 years, they came with it, and that was the worst Wisconsin defense. And maybe it was after just giving everything the week before. It shouldn't be. These are college kids, but it happens. They were able to do all right. Locke was decent. He's not great with this Wisconsin team. I think they can bounce back, but I think this is just tight. This is cold, windy. This is the old school Big Ten type weather in almost December. So low total here. I leaned under in this game. Should be good. Wisconsin wants to go. They need to win a game to get to a bowl game. I mean, there's supposedly going to be a few teams that are 5 and 7. How many teams want to go bowling? There's supposed to be a couple, and I don't know if they go. So I think they want to get to 6 and 6. I'd lean their way slightly at home.
All right, there we go. Good. I lean under 2 as well there with you with the total. All right, Oregon State and Boise State. We've got Boise State 20-point home favorites, 56.5 the total in this game. I mean, my goodness, if you're Boise, you were flirting with disaster there a little bit in Laramie, Wyoming on Saturday night, but you pulled through. You got the win. You're still on pace to be in the Mountain West Championship game with that narrow victory against Wyoming. Always plays them tough, though. That's why I took Wyoming plus the point. They always play Boise tough for some reason, especially in Laramie. And it happened, even though there's been a lousy season for Wyoming, they still managed to give Boise everything they could handle, losing only by 4. Boise State escaping with the victory there. Where did that come from Oregon State? They look like their season had fallen apart. 0-5 straight up. 0-5 against the spread were the Beavers in 5 straight games. Rock bottom for them against Air Force, where they got shut out. Didn't score a single point against Air Force. 28-0 on the road. But boy, did they respond last week. 10.5-point home dog. They win outright against Washington State. And that was only Washington State's, second or third loss of the year. 41-38. Crazy game, back and forth. Tons of points. I'll say this. Giovanni McCoy had been the quarterback most of the year for this Oregon State team, but they finally turned to the other quarterback. He's been there for a couple of years now, Ben Gulbranson, for the Beavers. He played solid. He gave them a little shot in the arm in the passing game, and they were able to obviously Trent Walker had a huge day, 12 receptions, 136 receiving yards. They could not defend him, that Cougars team. So the passing game was very good, and they mixed in the run just enough. Defensively, they still got carved up, but that offense certainly showed signs of life. But you're going up against a different caliber of defense here. That being said, they still threw the ball decently, and Boise State's secondary, that is where they're weaker. The pass rush is awesome, but you can throw sometimes on that Boise team. We'll see how this one plays out. I mean, certainly we saw life from Oregon State last week. This will be a lot tougher now. You were at home against Washington State. Now you got to go on the road at Boise. And maybe that was a wake-up call for Spencer Danielson and the Boise team that they barely escaped. Maybe they come out here and they put a whipping on Oregon State. But again, they just have to win to be in the Mountain West Championship game against UNLV and keep their playoff hopes alive. They don't have to win by 21. So I don't know. I lean Beavers. I just don't know if I trust their defense fully to hold up against Genty and the Boise State offense. That's going to be the critical component to if they can stay inside these 20 points, because that run defense of Oregon State, 178 rushing yards per game allowed, 102 in the country run defense. That scares me to death about taking Oregon State here and having to face Ashton Genty on the other side. What do you think here, CMAC, Oregon State, Boise State?
Yeah, Genty should just run wild, and maybe not even have to play the second half or fourth quarter. That was solid. One thing that I get to take advantage of it was Washington State's defense. You know what I mean? It just has been very good, and they finally got that offense moving, which it had been a struggle. I mean, not scoring against Air Force. And Cole Branson, that kid's been there for a few years. Like we talked about, I've seen him come in and play well the last few years. And Boise, this seems like just win and get out in this game. So, like, if you like Boise, take them early, because if I get over 21, I think Oregon State can hang around, because I think Boise just wants to get out with the win, get on, be nice and healthy, play UNLV. So, yeah, if I get over 3 touchdowns, I might grab Oregon State here in a game they can hang around. The last 2 road games have been pathetic from them. Horrible.
Yeah.
You know, horrible.
But was last week a sign of them flipping the switch and hitting the reset button and they're ready to, at least, or was that
maybe
just being?
I just lean their way. I don't know if this is a game you really want to get involved with. This game could get over, maybe, just because how bad or Boise's team total. That's what I'm saying. Instead of laying 3, just take that.
Here's the thing, too, about Boise. Keep this in mind. Since that blowout win they had against San Diego State in the first day of November, 28-21 at home against Nevada. They were 22.5-point home favorites. Didn't even come close to covering Boise in that game. Then at San Jose State, one of the most fraudulent point spread covers you'll ever see.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah. They had no business covering that game. And that was a San Jose State. That was a close game. That was 21-21 mid-third quarter. And then the roof caved in. And then obviously the defensive score at the end with 1:42 left. And then last week at Wyoming, they didn't even sniff a cover there. So Boise, the last 3 weeks, they didn't cover in 2 of those 3 games. And they shouldn't have covered either against San Jose State. So technically they could be 0-3 and should be 0-3 against the spread their last 3 games. So maybe it is too many points here for Boise in this spot. We'll see. But that run defense of Oregon State does scare me in the matchup. All right, next up, we've got Texas State and South Alabama. We've got Texas State 1-point road favorites, 61 being the total in this game. That was, everyone focusing obviously on some of the high-profile, upsets like Ole Miss losing and Alabama losing. What about Texas State getting thumped by Georgia State? And they were laying like 3 touchdowns in that game against the Georgia State Panthers. Now, I know they made it close at the end, 52-44, but they were getting whipped 38-21 at halftime, by Georgia State in that game. Christian Veillere, the Canadian quarterback, started instead of Gibson and played well, lit up that Texas State pass defense. Freddie Brock ran for 133 on the ground for Georgia State. Jordan McLeod in the offense was solid, but they didn't run the football particularly well. A lot of it was through the air. But that defense, and this is not the first time with Texas State on the road, they've had defensive issues. The loss at Old Dominion, the loss at Sam Houston State, for actually that was a neutral field, but it was still away from home. They gave up 40 in that game. They've had some puzzling performances on the road away from home at times, this Texas State team. And here they are in a spot where they are not even in the Sun Belt picture anymore as far as the championship. And they're laying a point on the road after what I saw last week against this surging what am I missing here? This South Alabama team that's 4-1 straight up in their last 5 games, that is rolling offensively, that has obviously got Gio Lopez doing a great job at the quarterback spot. Fluff Bothwell, one of my favorite names, going. Running the ball well for this Jaguars team. Jamal Pritchett, big-time receiver. They got weapons. They have a good O-line. Texas State hasn't been able to stop multiple teams now on the road. I'm shocked Texas State is favored here. I think part of this is people thought this Texas State team was going to be better than they've been coming into the season. They're clearly not. They've been overvalued, overrated much of the year. South Alabama's playing to get in the Sun Belt Championship game. If they win, they would need a Louisiana loss to be in the Sun Belt Championship game. So they don't control their own destiny in the Sun Belt West Division. But South Alabama can get their way to the Sun Belt Championship game. If they win plus Louisiana, the Cajuns lose. That would get South out. So there is something to play for here for Bama, South Bama. I like South Bama. Give me them here as a small home underdog. Probably lean to the over, too. I think we should see some points scored. CMAC, what do you think? Texas State, South Alabama.
Yeah, on the total, it just is a little bit too high, I thought, when I was going through this last night. Like, this is the 57 number. They're going to be all over it. So pretty sharp here on the total. And when these teams, man, get together, usually there's been plenty of points. South Alabama should be able to run it, well. They've done it all year. Was it almost 200 yards, 22nd in the country. They've been pretty good. So I think they'll have plenty of success. Lopez has been solid. He's clean. I think definitely they're in this game. Texas State's just been puzzling. I got against them, and won a couple, have lost a couple. I don't think they're very good. And they've looked great in other games. And they've looked horrible, like last week is a huge favorite. Just turnovers. It was just awful. Awful, awful. One thing with McLeod, he's got to take care of the ball if he does. They should be able to throw it on. The one problem with us, South Alabama, is their defense a little bit. Their secondary, they give up some yards. 115 in the country, give up almost 260. And that's been the strength for Texas State. 30th, get 266 with McLeod. But I agree with you. I think it's South Alabama or nothing in this game. Like, momentum's rolling with them. You want to back Texas State on the road? I don't at all.
I would agree. I would agree with that. All right, Mississippi and Ole Miss. It's the Egg Bowl on a Friday, which we don't always see. Ole Miss, 26.5-point home favorites, 61.5 the total in this game. Talent-wise, this should be a huge mismatch. Ole Miss offense versus Mississippi State defense, which is just beyond bad. No question about that. But where is the headspace of Lane Kiffin and his team right now after that crushing loss to Florida last week, pretty much ending any playoff hopes and certainly ending any SEC championship hopes for them? That third loss was devastating. Does he get them all fired up again? It is a rival. It's the annual Egg Bowl. It's Mississippi State, your in-state rival. But my gosh, when you have that kind of loss last week against Florida, kind of a dream crusher, I sure as fuck am not laying 26.5 with you, especially in a rivalry game. The question is, can you trust Mississippi State defensively, and can they do enough offensively to give themselves a chance in this game? Because that was pretty ugly for them coming out of the bye defensively against Missouri. 39 points allowed, 39-20. Brady Cook had 268 through the air. Both running backs, Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, just carved them up on the ground as well. Ugly stuff for Mississippi State's defense. I do think their offense is solid, though, with Van Buren at quarterback, Devon Booth running the football. And who knows what Ole Miss is showing up. Like I said, the psyche of Ole Miss has to be something that's in question going into this game. So by default, it's take the points or pass for me with Mississippi State in this one. Coming off that dream crusher against Florida last week, I'll put it this way. I'm not laying 26.5 coming off that game last week against Florida, knowing that, hey, all the dreams, all the aspirations out the window. This team was talking and thinking SEC championship, maybe even the playoff. Now neither is possible for Ole Miss. So good luck if you want to lay 20. Now, talent-wise, it's a total mismatch. Their offense, if Jackson Dart's on his game versus that Mississippi State defense. I get it. But mentality-wise, spot-wise, no thank you. Not 26.5 in a rivalry game. No way am I laying that. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly this still rivalry game. And yeah, their best day, they could cover this number. And the biggest problem too was like, man, I'd take these points. It's just the defense has been so bad with Mississippi State. It's just been
You might be better off taking Mississippi State team total, or at least splitting it with the spread, if you like that side.
Yeah, one thing, Florida had a little success running it. I mean, they were just good enough. They had 160 on the ground, so they were just good enough there to get the job done. Man, but they struggled. And Jackson Dart, to see him, those picks at the end, and he's crying on the sidelines. Ugh. Everything dropped out. I'm just glad that game, the defense has played well. It stayed under in that one. Yeah, I mean the points here with Mississippi State. I mean, Ole Miss is nothing to play. How do you get up after that, even here at home? I just think it'll be difficult for them. So lean the points here, Mississippi State.
I feel bad for the kid. That's just a nightmare, just horrific to watch it unfold in real time. Those interceptions right at the end, multiple interceptions right at the end of that game for Ole Miss. And he's doing the old apology tour. Apology cam after the game. Sorry to the players, sorry to the fans, sorry to everybody about all the interceptions at the end, which put an end to their chances against Florida. That seemed like a really sad, beaten down, kind of a woe is me attitude from Jackson Dart coming out. That's what concerns me here about potentially taking Ole Miss, which of course I have zero interest in doing that. Obviously, in this kind of a spot. The question is Mississippi State good enough to keep it within that point spread? All right, Liberty, Sam Houston. We've got Liberty 3-point road favorites, 47.5 the total. Don't look now, but looked like Liberty was in some trouble as far as the Conference USA Championship game. And now all of a sudden, all they need to do is win here, and they're in the Conference Championship game against Jacksonville State, who has already clinched and will host the CUSA Championship game as well. So it will be at Jacksonville State. They await their opponent in the CUS, and Liberty could be that opponent because all they need to do is win, and they are in. But so Sam Houston State is still very much alive. They need to win, but they also need Western Kentucky to lose because there is a pathway for the Hilltoppers where if they win their game and Liberty loses, Western Kentucky is in the Conference USA Championship game against Jacksonville State. So it's basically Jacksonville State versus one of Liberty, Sam Houston, and Western Kentucky. Those are the three teams still alive that could get there. And for these two teams facing each other, Sam Houston State needs a win plus a Western Kentucky loss. So they do not control their own destiny. But for them to have any chance, Casey Keeler's team here, Sam Houston State, does have to win still. And obviously Liberty has to win, but Liberty does control their own destiny where it's simple. Win and they are in. Liberty would face Jacksonville State. So both teams need to win, though, bottom line, here to keep their Conference USA Championship hopes alive. I still don't fully trust Liberty as a 3-point road favorite. I don't. Now, I know they picked it up here, and they've gotten a couple of wins here. The last couple. Let's not forget that against UMass, not a very good football team, not a very good defense in particular, and Liberty was life and death in that football game to escape against UMass. That's not what you want to see. Last week against Western Kentucky, probably one of their best games in quite some time. Very complete game. Salter was good. The run game with Cooley and Billy Lucas, Quentin Cooley, Billy Lucas, they couldn't contain them, Western Kentucky. I thought Liberty's defense, while Caden Veltkamp and the Western Kentucky offense moved the football, he also forced 3 interceptions out of Veltkamp, so very opportunistic ball hawking. Liberty defense last week ended up playing a huge role in that victory over Western Kentucky, and that's why they have control of their own destiny now, Liberty, because of that win that they got last week against Western Kentucky. But now 3 on the road. This Sam Houston State team has had some injuries, but they've battled through. They've been a feisty team. This is, by the way, a rematch of a game between them last year where Liberty hung, and this was a Sam Houston State that wasn't as good as last year, and Sam Houston State's driving to win the game in the last minute, and they get stopped on 4th down, like at the 10-yard line. I remember that game, and Liberty hung on at home, 21-16 against Sam Houston State. Now Sam Houston State gets this game. they've obviously struggled against the number 0-5 ATS, but they were favorites in 4 of those 5 games. Yes, they did lose to Jacksonville State last week, 21-11, but Jacksonville State was playing to punch their ticket to the conference, and plus they're just a great, probably the best team right now, Jacksonville State in that conference. So I don't hold it against. I actually think the defense for Sam Houston, CMAC, played very well. That's a great offense, Jacksonville State, and they held them in check, and it was a pretty solid effort. It's unfortunately the offense kind of struggled, but they do have Hunter Watson back. He's been back for a couple games at quarterback for Sam Houston. I don't know. I'm just not there with laying 3 with Liberty on the road into this game.
Yeah.
I'd lean Sam Houston. And remember, this Liberty team is still 3-7 against the spread this year. They've been burning money for their backers. CMAC, what do you think here? Big one in CUSA.
Yeah, that was a big win for. We talked about last week. I had been against Western Kentucky falling off after being great to start the year, and then you have a bad game with all those turnovers. It really could, and then kind of Liberty at a dog price right around there last week. When I saw this, I have to go back. I don't know if Watson's 100%. He looked a little bit better, but the offense still can't move it. I think they remember last year's game. Well, I lean the 3 with them to keep this close. I'm on this under. Just Sam Houston that hasn't been able to score any points at all. Both teams can run the ball, and both teams should have success. Like Sam Houston wants to do that. They've been very good, and that's one thing about Liberty with the running backs they have and Salter that should have plenty of success. But I think that just chews up the clock, and at this number, I got 48, 47.5 under here. Under.
Now, we're not talking about the Western Kentucky Jacksonville State game, which is on Saturday, but obviously this game hinges upon what that game is going to mean to Western Kentucky. Because if Liberty wins this game, that game means nothing now to Western Kentucky. They're out. So, and then that becomes basically an exhibition game because Jacksonville State's already clinched the spot in the Conference USA Championship game. So who knows if Rich Rod's going to rest Huff and rest some of his starters, some of his running backs in that game. But if Sam Houston State wins this game, then Western Kentucky is playing to get into the Conference USA Championship game against Jacksonville State, and it changes everything. So do what you want to do with that Saturday Western Kentucky game based on how the Friday game here with Liberty Sam Houston plays out. You can't move on that game until you see how this game unfolds. Because if Sam Houston wins, suddenly Western Kentucky's playing to get in the Conference USA Championship game Saturday against a Jacksonville State team that, it doesn't mean anything to them. But if Liberty wins, Western Kentucky's out. And yes, that game doesn't mean anything for Jacksonville State Saturday, but if Liberty wins, that game's not going to mean anything to Western Kentucky anymore either because they will have been knocked out. So again, that game, you don't handicap it, you don't bet it until you see how this game plays out, at least from a side perspective. All right, Stanford and San Jose State. We've got San Jose State 3-point home favorites, 55.5 the total in this game. And yes, that is San Jose State favored, by the way, against Stanford. So here's the thing with Stanford. Clearly, they have shown new life here down the stretch. They look like, remember, they were having that disastrous run. They were getting blown out. They were getting embarrassed every week. They had that stretch of 31-7 against Virginia Tech, 40-14 against Clemson, 49-7 against Notre Dame, 40-10 against SMU. But then they had the close loss to Wake. Then they get blown out again by NC State. But then they had the bye week. And they beat Louisville outright as a huge 3-touchdown dog. And then they had the rivalry game with Cal, 14.5-point dog. They covered wire to wire. They led most of that game, in fact. And Fernando Mendoza.
I should have won that game, yeah.
Should have won it. I mean, just a tough loss. And then the drive at the end with 2:40 left to win. And what an interview from Mendoza after that game. It's one of the better post-game interviews I've seen. All the emotion and just he's fired up beyond belief winning that game. Just cool stuff, that great interview he had after that win for Cal, that comeback win. Big rivalry game like that, to lose like that for Stanford, it does worry me now. You're going on the road here against San Jose State. Are you going to bring it here like you have the last 2 weeks? I'm not so sure. But San Jose State's kind of hit the wall, too. I mean, they've lost the last 2 games, ATS and straight up against Boise State and UNLV, 2 very good teams, but 2 pretty tough teams as well. Stanford and San Jose State have not played in 11 years, so there's not really much history to go back on. Walker Eget, the quarterback, but that was not good weather. That was a driving rain most of the night in that UNLV San Jose State game on Friday night. I kind of think we see points in this game, but again, keep an eye on the weather. Sidewise, it's tough. I don't think, even though Stanford's shown new life, covered in back-to-back games off the bye week, kind of hit the reset button. They've been better since then. I kind of want to take Stanford again as a dog because, I took them last week against Cal, but man, that was a tough loss. It was the Stanford-Cal game means a lot to both of those schools. I just wonder if where the psyche, CMAC, is going to be for Stanford for this game. What do you think here, CMAC?
Yeah, there's just nothing happened, and horrible weather in that game. I'd look to San Jose, just them to win at home. Now, against some of these teams, and Wyoming, Oregon State, was it they had at home? No, it wasn't. Wyoming at home. They beat Nevada. I just laying points with them. I just can't do it. The defense has just been too spotty at all. They will have success, though. And I think maybe you're right. This game could get over. Stanford still, we talked about them being dead last against the pass last year. They've been horrible this year as well. 127, almost right there. 271 yards. And what do we got here? Top 10 passing team in San Jose State. And that went down. I think they were fourth after last week. Nash didn't do anything. I think he could have a huge game here. And the rest of the receivers for San Jose State. So that's a prop I'm going to look up in this game to take. So just to key on that. And Stanford playing better. They had that game. I mean, they were up 21-7 to blow it to get nothing. I mean, hats off to Cal. I mean, that's why they are a 3-8 team. Man, better football teams win those games. And they just couldn't. Now they're another road game here. I just for them, even though it's not a far travel. Yeah, I can't be on the side. I lean over with you. I kind of like to take Stanford, but it's just 3 points. It's just ugh. Yeah, can't do it.
It's a good way to describe it. All right, you could say that about this game, at least from an eye test standpoint, watching it. Nebraska and Iowa, they always play on Black Friday, these two teams. And here we go again. Iowa 5.5-point home favorites, 39.5 the total in this game. Again, they made the offensive coordinator change before the USC game. And even in that loss, 28-20, I saw some glimpses of improvement from the offense and Dylan Raiola. The question was going to be, could it keep going into the Wisconsin game? And it was definitely one of his best games in a long time. That looked like the early season Dylan Raiola quarterback when he was lighting up Colorado and had a couple of good performances early in the year. They got the run game going with Emmett Johnson. They ripped apart that Wisconsin defense. Really couldn't be stopped. Almost 500 total yards, 29-15 edge and first downs for Nebraska over Wisconsin last week. They played with more tempo last week as well. That's something to keep an eye on with Holgorsen now calling plays. They're playing a little faster now, tempo again. Nebraska throwing the ball a little bit more. That matters for the total because I kind of lean over a little bit here, 39-39.5, just based on Nebraska's change in offense where they're throwing the ball a little bit more, a little more tempo. And look, Iowa continues to be 9-2 to the over this year and go over these low totals. It barely got over last week, Maryland and Iowa. If you got the good number, which I did, I got 41.5 with Iowa, Maryland over, and it just got over that total with 42 points, 29-13 win for Iowa. So I do lean to this over here. That's such a low number, and Nebraska throwing the ball a bit more, playing with a little bit more pace as well. From a side perspective, I mean, you look at these matchups, and I think we talk about this every year. Going back to 2018, the last 6 meetings, we had a 3-point win for Iowa, a 3-point win for Iowa, a 6-point win for Iowa, a 7-point win for Iowa, a 7-point win for Nebraska a few years ago, and then last year a 3-point win for Iowa. Good luck laying points in this series. It's not been good for you. I could only look at the Nebraska side, plus 5.5. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah. You know what? And they haven't been horrible. The Indiana game was bad for them, but they were in it with SC and close. That's where I'd have to be. I think they're at home and they win this, but nothing's shown. They've 6-point wins, 3-point wins. Like you're really rolling the dice. I think at home they can win. You hit on the total. I think this is too low. I just think this could get over the number. I mean, it's going to be cold as shit, but they just continue to get over, and I think it's too low. I thought this should have been 41 or 42. I think Nebraska, I don't know, they're not going to have a game like they did last week, and hats off to them. They got rolling, but I think it could sneak over. And their offense has been a little bit more loose and been able to score, where it just was so tight and so bad at times. But man, I was just snoring, and you couldn't. I mean, they're so boring, their game. So I think it could get over. I agree with you here. I think this is too a little too low.
I agree. I think it can get over. All right, Georgia Tech and Georgia. It's another
maybe not fly over, but
get to the 40s. That's all we need. Think about that. All it needs to do is hit the 40s, and it goes over the total. All right, we got Georgia 19.5-point home favorites against Georgia Tech 53 being the total in this game. Georgia, wow, everything broke right for Georgia last week with some of those SEC upset losses by Ole Miss and Alabama. They're very much alive again, still in the playoff mix in the as well. No doubt about that. And certainly that was a great sign for them. No question about that. Obviously, you look at Georgia going into this game here against Georgia Tech with everything, all that chaos last week, all that craziness with Ole Miss and Alabama going down. In the process, Georgia clinches their spot in the SEC championship game. And remember, all these power conference championship games, they're like that quote-unquote NCAA basketball tournament version, football version of an auto bid into the playoff. So if you win the SEC championship, you're in the playoff. So really, Georgia, all they have to do is they could still get in if they don't win that game, but they obviously assure themselves they're in the playoff if they win the SEC championship game. They are in that SEC championship game now for sure, where they will await the winner of Texas and Texas A&M that are essentially playing a play-in game to see who faces Georgia in the SEC championship game. But this is not a spot I'm looking to lay it with Georgia because they know now they're in the SEC championship game. Now, I don't think it would behoove them to lose to Georgia Tech, but we're not asking them to lose to Georgia Tech. We're asking Georgia to win by 20 or more, and they have not been a good bigger favorite all year long. We continue to talk about this. Hell, even UMass covered the spread last week. Georgia was laying 42.5. They won by 38 against UMass. UMass actually moved the ball a little bit in that game against the Georgia Tech. Against the UMass actually moved the ball against that Georgia defense. Georgia Tech off the 30-29 win, comeback variety against NC State. Again, not a great favorite, Georgia Tech, but now they're in the role we like them in. Haynes King's clearly compromised and banged up and battling injuries. Aaron Philo had to take over at the quarterback spot. He actually played okay. He can run with the ball. He's kind of like a miniature version of Haynes King, a duplicate, if you will. Very similar. Can throw. He can run. They run the quarterback a lot, Georgia Tech. And remember, last year, it's not only Georgia Tech in their best role as an underdog. This is where they beat Miami a couple weeks ago outright as a dog. But last year, head-to-head, Georgia only won by 8. 31-23. So it was a very competitive game, and Georgia Tech is a huge dog, covered wire to wire, only lost by 8. So for me in this game, C-Mac, it's Georgia Tech or pass, plus 19.5. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, does anybody want to lay points? I mean, especially in this rivalry, even with Georgia at home, with this team all year long. And last week, they kind of were up 16-7 through 3. And then just kind of gave it up, and NC State came roaring back at 22 points there in the fourth. A lot of points there late in that game. And the game got over in the last 4 minutes or so. They gave up a ton of yards on the ground, though, to Georgia Tech, the defense. I mean, NC State, I think, at around 250.
Yeah.
On the ground. Yeah, they got ripped there, but there's some years where these games have been dominated by Georgia in the past, but man, it's tough to take, even with, Haynes King probably out with, the problems he's been dealing with his shoulder, that they just kind of hang around in this one. So nothing showed me really Georgia. Better team, of course. They need to win. They have a stylish 50-7 win in them, possibly. I worry about that. But a rivalry game, I think almost 3 touchdowns. You got to lean here to Georgia Tech.
All right, we got Utah and UCF, Big 12 action. UCF 9-point home favorites. This is a Friday night game in the Bounce House. 48 the total. Final home game. I expect probably a good effort from UCF. Now, obviously disappointing, to say the least, last week against West Virginia and the way they played. 31-21 loss on the heels of the tough loss against Arizona State. But back home, I think they could show up here, play well. They did crush Arizona 56-12 their last home game. For Utah, you're going on the road and you battled like crazy against Iowa State last week. You lose by 3. You're trying to play spoiler to the Iowa State Big 12 championship hopes. You fall short. Now you got to go on the road where, look, it's been pretty ugly since they lost Cam Rising and since they've had to go to Isaac Wilson and all these mediocre quarterbacks. They lose by 8 at Arizona State on the road. They lose outright as favorites at Houston. They get blown out by Colorado. Something tells me UCF might put it on Utah here in this final home game. But now do I want to lean 9? I'm not so sure. It's a lukewarm lean for me, though, to UCF. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I get it. And with Utah, the close game with BYU, they probably should have won. And that game they covered last week being at home. But do those things happen here on the road? Pick 6, their defense, 90-yard pick 6, and they had a block punt. Too. Like they would need special teams and their defense to really help them out. Because when I went through it all last night, like these quarterbacks are horrible. They're just not very good. They're giving it their all, but it's just tough. The offense is still bad. And one thing with Utah in the past, for all these years, they've been able to run the ball, and they just like the offensive line is just not getting that same look. So this was tough. Of course, at the bounce house, UCF's better. I don't know if I want either of these two teams. This is just a pass for me.
All right, pass for C-Mac. All right, Utah State and Colorado State. We got the Rams 6-point home favorites, 59 the total. This is also on Friday afternoon coming up. So Colorado State, the great point spread run, and it gets upended by Fresno State on Saturday night. And that's a significant loss for Colorado State because it ends any hopes of them being in the Mountain West championship game. It's for the most part, it does. I think Boise and UNLV, they control their own destiny. Colorado State is alive, but they would need to win this game and have UNLV lose their final game against Nevada in the old what the hell's the name of that rivalry? You'll know, C-Mac. UNLV.
Yeah,
Nevada.
the Cannon.
Cannon. There you go. Battle for the Fremont Cannon. There you go.
Fremont Cannon.
As soon as you said Cannon, I remembered it. Yeah. Unlikely that UNLV will lose to Nevada, but it is a rivalry game. Crazy things can happen there when you're talking those. But we don't expect UNLV to lose to Nevada. So and that's what Colorado State needs. They need to win and have UNLV lose. So very unlikely. So I worry about laying 6 with them in this spot. And now they're, modest favorite after having that point spread streak snapped at the hands of Fresno over the weekend. Back to the defense that, looked like it was pretty bad early in the year. Keep in mind, too, with the Colorado State run, San Jose State, Air Force, New Mexico, Nevada, Wyoming. I mean, they did face some of the weaker teams in the Mountain West. They feasted on patsies. Then they played a little better team, Fresno, and they couldn't step up to the plate, Colorado State, in that game. But this is one of the weaker teams, Utah State. But a Utah State team, where did this come from? They look like their season had fallen apart. And now in back-to-back weeks, they annihilate Hawaii 55-10. They annihilate San Diego State 41-20 in back-to-back games. Their offense has been lethal, led by, of course, it's actually Bryson Barnes, the Utah transfer, that stepped in for an injured Spencer Petras against against San Diego State last week, and he actually played very well. Now, the question is Petras, he's questionable. It could be Barnes again at quarterback here for Utah State, but suddenly Utah State, these last 2 games out of nowhere, they've shown life. They've won.
Barnes is running wild.
And their offense is rolling. I'm leaning to the underdog here. Utah State +6, lean over as well. I think probably we'll see points. I think Colorado State can score here as well. Fowler, Nicolosi, and the offense should play better here against a weaker defense than what they faced last week with Fresno. So I lean over. I lean Utah State. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I know Colorado State has played more unders, and that's what I liked. I've been on a few of them. I thought last week was even good. The defense just got slapped early. They just got their ass kicked against a rested Fresno team I was a little worried about that, and they did because they had been really, really good. Just these games with Utah State, and I was on one of them that stayed under with Wyoming. How does this not get over? I just like they need to get up and down. Like that's just how they play. They have a bad defense. Like even they kick Hawaii's ass. All these games have gone over. Now at Wyoming, they win that game by 2. At Washington State, they lose by whatever that was, 19 or 20. I just think this goes over. How does it not? I just like with them. I think you take the over. Nothing in this game. They were red hot. I mean, I don't know if I go crazy, like big bet or anything, and I want to look at it a little bit more. But yeah, they've been playing some good football, inspired, and it's tough for Colorado State. They still have that open. They should come out ready to roll, but yeah, over.
Yeah, I like over, and like I said, I think it's. I'm not sure I'm ready to get back on the Colorado State train. This, especially with look again, Utah State with that offense, and you're getting 6 points with them. For me, it would be difficult to bet against them as underdogs here. What we've seen from that offense the last couple weeks. All right, final Friday game: Navy and East Carolina. We've got Navy 1-point road favorites, 56 the total in this game. This has been quite the run and resurgence that East Carolina's put together after the firing of Mike Houston. Blake Harrell has been the interim head coach during this time, and they have responded, and the players have been galvanized. They've played great. The offense, they switched to Caton Hauser at quarterback, the Michigan State transfer, and he has just totally opened up this offense, which has just been on fire here. 4 straight wins, putting up 38 points or more in all 4 games against now some pretty bad defenses: Temple, Florida Atlantic, Tulsa, and North Texas. But still, you got to give this ECU offense a lot of credit. They are on a roll. They've been playing hard, too, I think, because they want this guy as the permanent head coach. And I'm hearing rumblings they're about to make him the permanent head coach and take the interim tag off Blake Harrell. Now, my one concern is the timing of it. If it gets announced this week, does this take some of the edge off the players? And now, okay, now they've made him officially the full-time head coach. Do they maybe, does their effort and their focus and their intensity level off if they officially name Blake Harrell the head coach this week? That does concern me, but that being said, I'm not stepping in front of ECU right now. They're clearly feeling it. They're on a roll. Now they've got to turn around and, prepare for this Navy offense, which is a little unique. And Navy does have a bye week coming into this game after getting drubbed 35-0 by Tulane. But Navy's faded after that undefeated start. That Notre Dame loss really had them going the other direction all of a sudden. 3 of their last 4 they've lost. I still think there's a game East Carolina can win. I know Navy beat them last year 10-0, but it's a totally different East Carolina offense right now. I'm definitely leaning ECU, and certainly I've been on them the last few weeks. It's ECU or pass for me. The Pirates. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, this has been a problem for them, though, this Navy team for years.
Yep.
It has not been easy for them. Last week, they're down 21-0 to North Texas, and just start, coming back. One thing with North Texas, too. 1 touchdown after that. Are you kidding me? Nothing in the 4th quarter. Like, with that offense, it was like, wow, that was...
they just shut it down once they fell behind. It kind of felt like it watching it. That was weird a little bit. Yeah, well, I was watching it, too. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I'd lean over. The games just keep... East Carolina has just been able to score a ton. And Navy off the kind of it's a bye too, right? After getting shut out, I think they play a little bit better. They haven't been very good the last few weeks at all. I think this is ever a time East Carolina beat Navy right now. Get her done. I agree with you. Great chance. You're right. I've been on East Carolina and the over pretty much every East Carolina game since the coaching change. And the full game over obviously didn't hit last week against North Texas, but we were talking a 73.5 total in that.
True. That should have got there, though. For North Texas not to score, like we were saying, was pretty insane.
Yeah, it should have got there. I agree. No doubt about that. And look, Navy doesn't play fast, but they can be efficient. And East Carolina plays fast. So you got a pace war, but I think Navy can be efficient enough offensively, and East Carolina can do enough. Because remember, these service academies, they're never very good in the secondary, and I think East Carolina's passing attack with Hauser can probably light up Navy.
I think you stick to East Carolina.
Yeah.
Man, can they beat Navy, though? I mean,
that's been a mental hurdle, mental block for them being able to beat this team. But this is their best chance to do it, in my opinion. All right, let's go to Saturday. We've got UTSA and the other service academy, one of the other service academies, Army. Army 7-point home favorites, 55 the total here in this game. So you've got Army off the culture shock loss last week against Notre Dame, where clearly, look, the soft schedule, the chickens came home to roost, right? They hadn't played anybody. Yeah. And then they played Notre Dame last week, and they got absolutely walloped. Just weren't ready for that kind of that doesn't take anything away, though, from the season they've had. They've still had a phenomenal season. Bryson Daly, he's a tough son of a gun, that guy. I mean, he's got that Taysom Hill 2.0 mentality. I'm taking on the contact. Yeah, I'm running through it. I don't care. You can hit me twice. I'm still not going down. I applaud that. And even late in the game, like, he's getting hit and is still legs churning, and they're down they were down on that last drive, 49-7? And there's Bryson Daly in the last 2 minutes just churning and not going down off first contact. That's what you love about the service academies. They play hard every snap until the end of the game, regardless of the score. And we saw that again last week against Notre Dame. But that 49-14 loss, humbling a little bit. And like I said, they just hadn't faced anybody good pretty much all season long. They weren't ready to handle the physicality in the trenches of what Notre Dame brought and made too many mistakes. All of a sudden, Army, which just all year so good at not committing turnovers, and all of a sudden the turnovers started to happen against Notre Dame. But they've still had a great season. They're still going to be in the AAC championship game against Tulane. That's going to be a very interesting game, but doesn't mean I want to lay 7 with them here. They're off the Notre Dame blowout loss. They got the AAC championship game against Tulane next week. What does this game mean to Army? You know, not a whole lot. Now, these kids, they're not wired that way. They're going to still play hard for 60 minutes. That's what you get from an Army or a Navy or an Air Force. But I still don't want to lay 7. I still don't want to lay 7 here with Army in this spot. And UTSA, look, 6-5. That was senior night. They did get bowl eligibility with that win against Temple. Yeah, the kids will be up for this game, but it's a road game after clinching bowl eligibility. It's not a great spot for UTSA either, but I think by default I'd have to lean a little bit to the Roadrunners here. And I like the way Owen McCown's playing, and he's starting to really play some good football on offense right now for UTSA. Owen McCown, he's running with the football a lot more lately as well. And then you've got, of course, Robert Henry running the ball. David Amador and company in the receiving game have been pretty solid lately too for UTSA. So I lean UTSA. Don't love the game, but I do lean to the underdog here. Maybe lean to the over too. What do you think, C-Mac?
That's how I felt. Like, I've made a bunch of money with UTSA the last few weeks, and it's like, do I want to? I kind of default take these points to Army. I think will play better. It's just, what do they have to play for? It's a cold game. UTSA on the road. They've been pretty good. I mean, for who they're playing here, at Rice, they lost by 2. Even ECU, they lost by 10. So they haven't got blown out since, at Texas early on in the year when they were really, really bad. The offense is just humming, though. Can they bring that a little bit here? I think they're in it. Like, I think you lean their way. Yeah.
Well, what I was just going to say, Goldju in the chat, they got banged up in that game. They lost their captain on defense in that game, Army as well. And they mentioned it on the broadcast. Domenico, I think was his name.
Yeah.
He is one of Max Domenico. He's like the captain, like the leader of that entire defense for Army. And his season's, I think, probably over from what I heard, the way that injury looked. So that's a huge loss for Army on defense. And they need all hands on deck as it is. So that's an impact injury for Army. They suffered with Domenico leaving that game against Notre Dame with injury.
For sure. I'm with here. I lean over. UTSA has been pretty much, especially these home games, the run just been the over's been money. Army just a little bit weird. It got there, of course, with Notre Dame kicking their ass. But Air Force, the North Texas game was really weird, 14-3. But if I have a lean here, it'd be at 54.5. It'd be the over here. Yeah.
TCU, Cincinnati.
I really love it.
in the Big 12 next up, we've got TCU 2.5-point road favorites, 58 being the total here in this game. TCU's been one of these teams this season, much like it's often been here the last few years for Sonny Dykes. You like him as a dog, you don't love him as a favorite, but suddenly that's changed a little bit. 2 straight covers as big favorites against Oklahoma State and Arizona. And I'll be honest, I think Scott Satterfield's teams just hit the wall. They've run out of gas. Cincinnati. These have been some ugly losses the last 2 weeks against good teams, Iowa State and Kansas State. But the defense, I think, they've been battling injuries for a few weeks now, and I think they've just been on the field a lot. They're worn down. They don't have great depth on that side of the ball, and it's starting to show. They've given up 31-plus points in 4 straight games. Colorado, West Virginia, Iowa State, Kansas State have all scored into the 30s, and Kansas State got 41 against this Cincinnati defense last week. I think I lean over, but more so TCU team total over, and I actually lean TCU. As long as this doesn't get above a field goal, I think they've just hit the wall, Cincinnati. Doesn't look like there's a lot of energy and gas left in that tank. Not to mention we're seeing some serious ass regression lately from Sorsby at quarterback for Cincinnati. He's definitely struggled second half of the year after a pretty good first half. So I do lean TCU. I understand why they're road favorites here. C-Mac, what do you think?
I get it, and hats off to them, but there's no way I'd back them. And this is not good for Cincinnati, you talked about. But at least those last 2 were on the road. Yeah. The tough one was the home loss to West Virginia, where they just shot themselves in the foot. We talked about that game. So these last 2 on the road, maybe they hit a wall. But I think if you're ever going to take them, they want to get to 6-6, would be here at home catching 3.
That's true. Bowl eligibility at home is, that's an intangible. You have to factor that in. Yep.
I think this is it. They will be up, ready for it. And hats off to TCU. Arizona, they kind of shut down. We know Houston doesn't have a great offense, but it's just been fool's gold. Their defense is horrible. And you know what their problem is? They can't run the ball. Fafita threw it pretty well in that game. They run the ball, it's like 20 yards. They've had zilch, nothing. Arizona running football. And, TCU covered. Hats off to them, a team that could never do that. Maybe the defense a little bit. I still think the defense ain't very good. So Cincinnati here +3 at home. I think they win it outright, but take the 3.
We're going to talk about another team in a couple of games that looks like they've run out of gas as well. But first, before we get to that, South Carolina and Clemson, where we have Clemson 2.5-point home favorites, 49 the total in this game. You look at Clemson, they are still in the ACC championship picture. SMU is in the ACC championship game. They are waiting to see if they face Miami or Clemson. Miami controls their own destiny, though. If Miami beats Syracuse, if Miami beats Syracuse, Miami will face SMU in the ACC championship game. If somehow Syracuse pulls the upset and beats Miami, it opens the door for Clemson to be in the ACC championship game if they can beat South Carolina here on Saturday. Regardless, they need help. They need Syracuse to help them out and beat Miami. Plus, they have to beat South Carolina. But regardless of all that, I just think South Carolina might be the flat-out better football team, and I'm interested in taking them 2.5. Certainly, when it was 3, I jumped on the +3 early with South Kakalaki. Down to 2.5, I still lean that way. I like the job that Shane Beamer's done. Sellers has gotten better as the season's gone on, and this is serious fucking defense South Carolina has. I've become impressed with them. They've had some really good showings in the past. I remember what they did to Alabama. They should have won that game. They really bottled up Alabama in that game. They destroyed Texas A&M. Not many teams have blown out Vanderbilt, but South Carolina did, 28-7. They obviously had the win against Missouri as well. They've had some pretty good showings down the stretch, playing really good football. This is not an easy game to keep those faint ACC championship hopes alive for Clemson. I think South Carolina's live here. C-Mac, what do you think?
I think they are too. I think they're just a flat-out better defense, really. And Sellers takes care of the ball. Sanders gets going. I think they can win this because this has been a shit place for them. Even on the road, I forget. At home, they've lost to Clemson. Clemson's been a lot better the last 5-6 years, but they've got really their ass kicked. They did beat Clemson though 2 years ago here, 31-30. That's how I feel here. This game could be close, but everything from that defense, I think this game is tight. And I'd rather have the 3, even the 2.5. I mean, I have not been impressed with Clemson, especially lately. The Louisville loss, I mean, like in some of these wins that just like against Pitt, they were asleep at the wheel. And normally I always wanted to fade them. Clemson's kind of kicked their ass. I think they can hang around in here and just and be in this football game. Take the couple points.
All right, next up, we've got Pitt and Boston College. Boston College, 5-point home favorites, 48.5 the total. This is the team I was talking about that I think's run out of gas, Pittsburgh. After what I saw last week against Louisville, I took the big fat L with them because I thought, what they showed against Clemson, they could have won that and they fell short, but it was either a hangover from the Clemson loss or I don't know what, and Holstein getting injured didn't help either, obviously. In that game against Louisville, but still to get blown out 37-9, and then they kind of just mailed it in, down the stretch. Meanwhile, Boston College, 6-5, they get bowl eligible with the win against North Carolina, dominant win, 41-21. They've now covered 4 straight going into this one, final home game of the regular season. You wonder where Pitt is at after starting the year undefeated. They've now gone 0-4 straight up. 1-3 against the spread their last 4 games, kind of trending in the wrong direction late in the season. We'll have to see what the status is of the Pittsburgh quarterback situation as well. Obviously, if Eli Holstein is a no-go in this game for the Panthers, they'll turn to Nate Yarnell, who got the start against Clemson. Either way, I agree. I understand completely why the betting markets have moved this one. BC open 2.5 up to 5. I get it completely. I lean to that side as well. It's getting pricey a little bit now at 5, but I still lean BC for sure. C-Mac, what do you think?
Another game is a little bit cold with some wind in this one. Boston College, just a little different now. They're favorites here at 4.5.
How about the quarterback changed from Thomas Castellanos to Grayson James, the FIU transfer, and look at what that offense has done now all of a sudden. Going to Grayson James.
Yeah, they didn't want Castellanos there. He was trash. There's all the after of all that.
Yep.
Brian didn't like him. Yeah, they kicked their ass. I still think this short number. How do you want to back Pitt? I think you take that. James did. This is what I said last week. Just run the ball. They ran for 230, right around there. He had 237. He had the pick, just kind of similar. And that's what he did here. 192. He was good. Take care of the football. I think they win here too, even laying 4.5. It's just been a little bit different from them covering numbers. I know the Syracuse was the 3, but I think once again, I hate going back after the huge win, but at home here in Pittsburgh, just in the not in neutral, reverse. Yeah. And I'm a little bit mad. I didn't lay it with Louisville. I thought about it. The 9 and the number bit back to 7 by closing on Saturday, where that was a little bit out at 8 all week, and it didn't fucking matter at all. So Boston College here. Play it.
All right, we got NC State and North Carolina. This is your rivalry game, the battle for the Liberty Bell, as they often call it. We've got North Carolina, 3.5-point home favorites, 55. No, that's Duke and North Carolina. My bad. This is NC State and North Carolina. We've got North Carolina, 3.5-point home favorites, 55.5 the total. North Carolina obviously got walloped last week by this aforementioned Boston College team. Kind of a flat spot for them, too. Not flat, like they didn't try to lose the game, but I just figured you may not get their best going all the way up to Chestnut Hill, knowing they've got this rivalry game on tap with NC State. A rivalry game where, look, North Carolina is going to want, like, they've lost 3 times in a row to NC State. So something tells me they've had this game circled. And I expect a great effort from Chris Well at quarterback, Omarion Hampton, the running back, the defense, the whole team, I think, steps up, plays a good game here. But at the same point in time, they are 0-3 straight up against NC State in this rivalry the last 3 years. And NC State, coming out of their bye week, I was interested to see what we'd get from them against Georgia Tech. They stepped up. They used that bye week as we're not quitting on this season at 4-6. We're going to try to win. And unfortunately, they fall short. 30-29, but they bowl eligibility. They could have clinched it with that win against Georgia Tech. They just couldn't hold on late. Georgia Tech comes back to win, but still, they can beat their rival. They can get to 6-6. if they win this game, NC State. So there is a lot, still on the table here for the Wolfpack in this game as well. And I agree with when this opened at 5 with North Carolina as a favorite, I think it was too high at that number. Now down to 3.5 makes sense. I think it's a close game either way. Bailey, the quarterback too for NC State, is getting better each week. I think he's playing better. He's running the football as well, dual threat. There's certainly been better signs of life offensively. The run game's been good lately, especially from that combination of Bailey running it along with Hollywood Smothers, Kendrick Raphael. They've got multiple backs that have been starting to run the football better. We know North Carolina's defense, well, a little bit better the last few weeks. It took a big-ass step back last week against Boston College. So still a little leery to lay points with North Carolina. So I think I agree with the move. Above a field goal, I would lean NC State here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, they're probably up for this game, but this is crazy. This was crazy at 5. There's just no way.
That was surprising to me. It was that high on the open. Yeah.
Take the 3.5 with NC State. This game's close. Probably could win it outright. When you look at the defenses, they're pretty similar. They've both been all right. In the end, I just think North Carolina, it's like you take away from those wins, like nothing. Florida State sucks. Like, I guess the at Virginia was all right, but I don't know. I think NC State's hungry. Big rivalry. They want to get to a bowl game at 6-6. Both these teams, I haven't really wanted to back them at all, ever. Of course, I don't want to back North Carolina, but they haven't made you any money, really, either. So I think you take the Wolfpack or nothing here.
All right, next up, Florida and Florida State. We've got Florida 15-point road favorites in Tallahassee, 45.5 the total in this game. So last week, huge win, very physical game, emotional win, upset over Ole Miss, really, really hurting, pretty much killing Ole Miss's SEC championship and playoff hopes in the process. You saw the emotion from the players, from Billy Napier, the head coach. You would think maybe a letdown here, but I'll tell you what, the last 2 years, Florida State has dummied Florida. Not dummied them, but they've won the last 2 games, and I don't think Florida's going to take Florida State lightly. I think they're going to come in here and say, we've lost to these guys 2 years in a row. It's payback time here, and certainly Florida State's a team that is ripe for the picking, because you look at these games here, the last 3 against FBS competition, 36-14 loss to Miami, 35-11 loss to North Carolina, 52-3 loss at Notre Dame. I mean, they're not even competitive in these games. DJ Lagway, I see improvement week by week with him. He was solid, didn't have to throw the ball a ton, but he can run with it too. And he relies on this great running back too. Montrell Johnson had a huge game running the football for Florida last week. Obviously, their defense has gotten better and better throughout the course of the season as well. They did give up 323 through the air to Dart, but they also forced multiple interceptions out of him. They kept the Ole Miss ground game relatively in check. It's just been a hell of a job by Billy Napier turning this team around. For me, this is lay it or don't play it. I just simply do not trust Florida State. They have not even been competitive. They've not even been in the same football field with the recent teams they've faced. And Florida, I know after the big win against Ole Miss, we think emotional hangover. No, they've lost to Florida State 2 years in a row. They know this team down and out right now. I think they might lay an ass kicking on Florida State. I mean, I don't know if I'll lay it, but for me, it's lay it or don't play it. I don't want Florida State. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I mean, it is lay it or nothing. I mean, there's just no life from Florida State. The only thing is this is the rivalry between these two teams. But yeah, how could you want it? I mean, I got nothing here. Florida, great game. The under, I had a little bit. They won. Ugh, that's it.
Luke Kromenhoek is probably going to be the quarterback for Florida State. And I know he played well against, who the fuck was it last week? Charleston Southern. But
Charleston Southern.
They're not even a very good FCS team from what I heard going into that game either.
No, so they're not.
Let's not get too.
And they gave him, geez Louise. They shouldn't even have that touchdown.
Yeah.
Like Florida, that's how bad they are. Yeah.
It's later, don't play it. All right, next up, Tennessee and Vanderbilt. Tennessee 11-point road favorites, 48.5 the total. This is another team that benefited greatly from the Ole Miss and Alabama losses last week, as Tennessee certainly furthers their playoff hopes. Now, they can't win the SEC, so they're going to have to be a at-large team, if you will, to be in the college football playoff, but they still only have 2 losses on their schedule to Georgia and Arkansas, so they're still in good shape. And as long as they win here,
yeah,
put themselves in good position to win, to be in the playoff. But it's a rivalry. These teams always play each other late in the year. And Vanderbilt has just been a machine as an underdog. Now, we got a little lucky last week. It was a late touchdown, fourth quarter, and then LSU just took a knee when they got down inside to hang on for dear life with Vandy plus the points there, but they got it done again, and still just the one game this year as a dog that they failed to cover. 7-1 now, ATS is an underdog this year, the Vanderbilt Commodores. I'm taking them here, man. Plus 11. I get that feel. And here's the thing with Tennessee. They lose to Georgia. They don't cover against Mississippi State. They only win by 19. They only win by 10 against Kentucky, laying 17.5. They were 14-point favorites against Florida. They only won by 6. They have not been good as bigger double-digit favorites. 0-4 against the number in their last 4 games, Tennessee, as double-digit favorites against FBS SEC competition. Look at these games. Arkansas, they lost outright. Florida, they didn't cover. Kentucky, they didn't cover. Mississippi State, they didn't cover. 0-4 ATS, last 4 as an SEC double-digit favorite. Vandy's live. Vandy could shock them, quite honestly, because this team is still, sometimes their offense with Nico Iamaleava is great, and sometimes it goes cold for extended stretches. Sometimes the defense is great, and then sometimes it gives up the odd big play or two here or there. I think Vanderbilt's going to give them a game, personally. And how do you argue against 7-1 ATS as a dog this year for Clark Lee, Diego Pavia, and this Vanderbilt team? C-Mac, what do you think?
Under first, and Vandy. Is both here. The under just keeps cashing for Vandy. The defense has bend but don't break. It's not flashy, but they've been good enough. So I got to give a little credit to them. I mean, even the South Carolina, Pavia's deal with the injuries before and everything going on, but 28 points in that game. They just, in all these games, the defense, I just think, doesn't get enough credit, and the offense, just the long drive, slow play. They're not flashy. They're not running up and down. This isn't, the offense here for Vandy. So under, because we know Tennessee's defense is really good, and they've been a pretty good under team at times when you picked them in spots. So under, and Vandy. One more time, Babano. One more time. Plus 11.5 here. Tight one.
I think so. Tennessee. If Tennessee wins, give me Tennessee by 6 or 7 if they win. Not by 12. Not by 12 or more, in my opinion.
That's what it's been.
Yeah.
I mean, Randy's outright won a few of them, but like Texas, they lost by 3. They lost Alabama by 5. Beat Kentucky by a touchdown. You know what I mean? Yeah. Other than the South Carolina game, they've just been right there. They've either won or lost by a touchdown or less.
Absolutely. All right, next up, Miami and Syracuse. Miami 11-point road favorites in the Dome, 67.5 the total in this game. Should be a shootout. The question is, do we get over 67.5? Some of these real high Miami totals haven't always been going over lately, and we saw the scoring really die down in the second half last week against Wake. Syracuse, obviously, you look at them, McCord, and the passing game is the strength. You can throw the football a little bit on this Miami team. They're coming off the 31-24 win against UConn, following the big road upset win at Cal, so they played really good football, especially on offense the last 2 weeks. I'm telling you what, this is now twice in the last 3 weeks. I had Duke plus the points against Miami. I had Wake plus the points against Miami, and just got absolutely brutalized with a terrible beat on both of them with just shit the bed tactics.
So did I. I played it late. I was going to stay off, but I was like, I got 24.5. And the whole game till the fourth quarter with 7 minutes was 20-14.
Just like the Duke game. Wake led in the third
20-14.
Pissed it away. Yeah.
20-14, 8 minutes in the fourth. I'm like, wow, they've got a kick return. Like, if they could get just another field goal or score, this is probably good.
22-0 fourth quarter, right in your eye hole.
7 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
But
interceptions and turnovers and short fields for Miami, and it just brutal losses. You know what I'm doing? Because I'm going against Miami again. I'm stubborn, and I think Syracuse has the passing game to give them some trouble.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm going to go first half full game split with Syracuse. I'm not dealing with this bullshit anymore. This fourth quarter implosions like Duke and Wake had against it was the whole second half for Duke, and it was just the fourth quarter where it imploded for Wake. I'm not dealing with that crap again. So I'm splitting it up this time. None of this all on the full game for Syracuse here. I'm going to go first half and full game because the first halves have not been good. They lost to Georgia Tech. They had the bad start against Duke. They had the slow start last week. They were only up by 6 at halftime against Wake. So I'm splitting it up this time. Syracuse, yeah, full game, but definitely more, maybe even more on the first half. Because one thing we have seen from Miami is whether the other team gets tired or they just wear down, they start making mistakes, they panic because they're trailing, and they've been turning the ball over and setting up this explosive, potent Miami offense with Cam Ward and company on short fields. I don't want to deal with that nonsense again. So I'm definitely, if I'm going to be on Syracuse, but I'm going to definitely split it up this time. First half and full game. Lean over as well. C-Mac, what do you think here? And again, Miami win and they're in the ACC championship game. What do you think here?
Yeah, winning they're in. They just want to get the win here in this one. Syracuse, too. It was one I just didn't pull the trigger because I knew they were going to be at home the next week here with Miami, and UConn covered. I wanted them with the 10.5, and I stayed off. I was kicking myself a little bit in that game. Syracuse threw for a ton. I think they're going to have success here. Now, Miami's going to score on anyone. Like, that's just flat out. I mean, they should get to 40, but I think Syracuse at home, they're going to be pumped for this game, and it could be a lot tighter than people think. Yeah, I just think Miami's fraudulent. I and their ATS is 6-5. Their number, like, it should be 3-8. Man, but hats off to them. Like, hats off to the people that had Miami that won those 2 bets. Like, those are breaks where you're, clicking your heels. Holy shit. Sorry, it's rant on Rantville here for me.
That's okay, and I feel it. And bragging about it as if it was just the greatest bet in the history of sports betting. Calm down, man. You needed every fucking break in the world to go your way, and you needed Duke and Wake Forest to absolutely shit their pants in the second half and in the fourth quarter of those games. So shut the fuck up thinking that was such a great bet. Even though it cashed, didn't make it a great bet. The way those games played out. All right, next up, we've got Virginia Tech. Another rivalry game here. We've got Virginia Tech, 7-point home favorites in this game in Blacksburg, 48.5 the total. This is a night game in Blacksburg, which means I'd be a little leery of backing Virginia, even though in these rivalry games I usually like to take points, and I don't usually like to lay points, especially a touchdown or more, but this is the better team, Virginia Tech. This is obviously a home field at night, which is pretty strong. When they get it going, they get it amped up. And certainly, you talk about a team running out of gas a little bit. We've kind of seen some of that from Virginia here down the stretch with that terrible performance against Notre Dame, where it's just a turnover fest for Calandria. SMU, they get blown out start to finish. Calandria wasn't great again, even though they went back to them. They couldn't run the football at all against SMU, get blown out 33-7. They look like they're on their last legs right now, Virginia, a little bit. So I'm probably going to pass. It's like I'd like to take the 7 in a rivalry spot, but Virginia Tech at home, the better team. They look like they're, like I say, Virginia's trending in a bad way these last couple of games, the way they played. Not enough on offense, turnover prone, not what you want to see. C-Mac, what do you think here?
I think it's lay it or nothing here. But there's just one thing, from what I saw him come in of Watson, he looked good. Because he's out, I think he's going to be gone.
Yeah, and already Drones is sidelined. Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't mention that.
He was out. I mean, he was on the side.
Down to William Watson. Yep. Who played well.
So, he played okay. He was 12-25, not too great. He did have a pick.
Yeah.
And Duke looked good. I mean, shout out to them. They did get a couple
fourth quarter.
Late
it took
points.
A while to get going, but he played well in the fourth.
That's my only thing here. That's why I always want to be short with it too. It's just tough for me to back a guy that I just haven't seen enough and want to lay 7 even at home.
Because I'll tell you what, I don't know if William Watson expected to be at quarterback here for Virginia Tech. Because remember, this is the third guy, on the team here behind Drones and behind Schlee. So keep that in mind. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. But like I said, for Virginia Tech, we'll see how he fares if he is indeed going to start in this game. And there's probably a good chance of that here. But he does have some running ability. It's important to note that he's got that tool in his toolbox for this game.
Maybe he's better than Schlee. I mean, I don't know how high on that fucking guy.
No doubt. So tricky game there. All right, Marshall and James Madison. JMU 3.5-point home favorites, 52.5 the total in this game. Of course, when it comes to the Sun Belt, there are Sun Belt championship ramifications here, especially when you look at the Sun Belt East, where it's Marshall and Georgia Southern. Marshall can clinch a spot in the Sun Belt championship game with a win over James Madison or a loss by Georgia Southern against App State. Georgia Southern clinches a spot with a win and a Marshall loss. So Marshall controls their own destiny. Marshall wins here. They're in the Sun Belt championship game. I actually think I want to take Marshall here plus 3.5. I like the way they continue to keep playing, quite honestly. They've been good. The Tulsa transfer quarterback, Braxton's been pretty solid for them lately. This has been arguably the best defense in the Sun Belt throughout the court. They've been a point spread machine, 9-1-1 against the spread. Great road win against Old Dominion last week, 42-35. And again, they have just been they've clearly established themselves as one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, which puts them in this position here to be able to get to the Sun Belt championship game with a win. The only concern is JMU on this home field. You know, they've been really weird. It's a weird team. On the road, they've laid some eggs. They've had some duds, James Madison, like at App State last week, at Georgia Southern, at UL Monroe, losing 3 road games as favorites here in Sun Belt play. But at home, they've been a different beast at times. You know, they've blown out Coastal. They've blown out Georgia Southern or Georgia State. They've had some 5-0 at home, undefeated. So not an easy place to win for Marshall in a game they got to have to guarantee they're in the Sun Belt championship game. But I just think they're the better team. I think they're the better defense, too, because James Madison has given up points. I like Barnett, but they have given up some points. 3.5, it's Marshall or pass for me. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, all of a sudden the defense is falling apart for JMU. And I think what you just touched on, what I was going through last night, is the fraudulent, because these shitty home team here at home. Ball State, Coastal, I mean, it's a good win, 39-7, but Southern Miss, Georgia State, I mean, what the – and then they've just been awful on the road. Awful has been James Madison, but they do play better, you know, at the house. I mean, how can you go against this Marshall team? Like, I think they're the numbers not too far behind. Their defense playing solid, and they're 9-1 ATS. 3 in the hook. I hate to go against James Madison, but they've just been up and down. I mean, what do you get? Probably better here, of course, but I lean Marshall here with the 3.5. I don't know if I bet this is again. I'm going to wait on a little bit, but I think at this number, I think it's tight.
Yeah, I agree. I'll probably get in on Marshall. I don't know how big a bet it's going to be because I admit the line reeks a little bit. Like with how good Marshall's been point spread cover, and you're getting 3 and the hook with them in this game where they need to win it to be in the Sun Belt championship game. We know there's teams that
they've covered everything too, Babano. Like the last bad one was Ohio State way early when they lost 49-14. Yeah.
But still, I definitely lean Marshall still at 3.5. But again, must win doesn't equal will win. How many times have they win the game? You're in the Sun Belt championship game, and then they go on and they lose that game. It's very possible. And James Madison has been good at home. They're a good team. They've just been much better at home than on the road. All right, Duke and Wake Forest. Duke 4-point road favorites, 53.5 the total here in this game. God, Wake Forest, it was such a painful beat, terrible beat, awful. Having to sit through that and take it right up the old rectum with that loss against Miami last week with them. That's what it felt like. That's how bad it was. That's how painful it was with the.
I know. I would have had a perfect morning too. Like, perfect undefeated morning and that. And I thought that was golden. So, yeah.
Terrible. So I'm a little leery of coming back to them. Not to mention Duke's playing really good here the last few weeks. They're at NC State, beat Virginia Tech, wire-to-wire lead, took SMU to overtime, and we know how good SMU's been lately. Duke almost beat them, 28-27 in overtime. I don't want to step in front of Duke right now. They're definitely the better defensive team. Wake still stinks defensively. Duke is better. Now, Wake Forest has had a little bit of quarterback issues now because, of course, Bachmeier was hurt a couple weeks ago. They went to Kern. Bachmeier came back against Miami. He wasn't really that great. Kern finished the game. But either way, their quarterback play has been a little unstable lately. Rivalry game, but I think Duke's better, and they might be a lot better, especially on defense. I actually lean to the road favorite. Don't love laying points in the rivalry games, but this might be the one exception. For me, it's Duke or pass. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I had some of that under that didn't go, but Duke just keeps. I mean, I've been backing them all year long, so it's weird. I don't want them here. Wake Forest, until that fourth too, the defense played well because the offense wasn't really humming against. They had a kick return, a touchdown too, out of the 14 points. And Duke definitely has the better defense. Rivalry game, something tells me this could be close, but Duke definitely the better defense. And kind of all year I've been catching points with Duke. They did cover, I want to say here, Florida State, small 2.5-point favorites at home, but there really hasn't been too much of that all year long. So I'm going to stay off, but I think it's Duke or nothing in this one. They've been money. Different spot though here on the road lane.
Keep in mind, too, Duke was -2 turnovers last week. Again, they did turn the ball over a lot against Virginia Tech, and they still won in coverage.
That's how they scored, too, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that is a positive sign. When you go -2 in the turnover margin and you still win and cover, and we pretty much win or lead start to finish, that tells me a lot. All right, Michigan and Ohio State. Here we go. The annual rivalry game on the last week of the season. Here we go at the Shoe in Columbus. Ohio State 21-point home favorites, 43.5 the total in this game. So on one side of the equation, you could say, well, wait a minute now. Michigan has figured out Ohio State the last couple of years. They have clearly gotten the Ohio State hex out of their system, and they have finally figured out how to beat Ohio State in this annual game. Remember, Ohio State was on this double-digit win streak against Michigan. It ended 3 years ago, and now it's 3 straight wins and covers for Michigan against Ohio State. So part of me says, gosh, got to take 21, right, with Michigan in this spot. But different Michigan team. Jim Harbaugh's not patrolling that sideline anymore. He played a role in those wins. J.J. McCarthy's not patrolling that sideline anymore. It's a much weaker Michigan offense now in comparison to those Michigan teams. And I know for a fact Ohio State is in one of these, and we saw it against Indiana with the late touchdown last week against the Hoosiers. Once that game got away from Indiana, they may not show mercy. They hate Michigan, and they really, it makes them sick that they have lost 3 in a row to this Michigan team, where if they're up by 20 or 17 late in the fourth quarter at the 5-yard line, they're punching that shit in. You better believe it, for that late touchdown to cover the point spread and tack on that extra score. So that's what concerns me. The Michigan offense on the road against this, what they did to Curtis Rourke and that defensive line, just blowing up the line of scrimmage and sacking Curtis Rourke 6-7 times. What could they do to Davis Warren here in Michigan in this game if they were able to do that to Curtis Rourke? Now, I know Davis Warren's played better lately, and I know they put a 50 spot on the board against Northwestern last week, but you can't even compare those two teams and those two defenses. So I'm conflicted on this game. Part of me says, how do you not take 21 with Michigan when they have owned Ohio State 3 years in a row? But part of me says, well, Ohio State's maybe not just a little bit better than Michigan this year, maybe a lot better, and they won't hesitate to just annihilate Michigan if they get the chance to do it. So I'm back and forth on this one, but very interesting game to watch. Can that offense work, Michigan, on the road? That's the biggest question and fear that I have for the Wolverines, because if Ohio State brings that defense like they did against Indiana, I don't know how Michigan's moving the football. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, once they got going, he was running for his life. Rourke in that game, I mean, he only had 68 yards passing. There's only one spot that's been consistent. Savano is, if you want to go full game, Ohio State, lay it, is first quarter. These teams, and it was Indiana again, Northwestern the week before, 0-0, and even they scored first right in the beginning of the second half. I've seen it week in and week out. It's just the first quarter, Ohio State needs to get going a little bit. They're a little bit asleep at the wheel, and and also take them at half. I've done it a couple times where I just made a bet on them, and then boom, they come out and yeah, kick ass and lay an over. But they remember those last few years of losing. And before that, there was plenty of games where Ohio State could beat them near this number, near 3 touchdowns. They've done it a few times. So I think they remember it. And yeah, Ohio State here, they wins. It's just you want to lay the 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. To me, I feel like I'm walking into a death trap taking Michigan. I feel like I feel like there's reasons to. 21, they've beaten them 3 times. It's a lot different Michigan team. And Ohio State could be out for blood here. Let's be honest. There's no doubt. They wouldn't hesitate to win this game 49-7 if they get the chance to. Not that they're capable of it, because Michigan defensively is still okay, but still.
But okay.
A lot of good offenses lately either, Michigan. And this is a different one. Will Howard and at quarterback and Travion Henderson. And what a cocky bastard Will Howard's turning into. He was always this polite, good, humble kid at Kansas State. He gets to Ohio State and he's flapping his gums and he's he's taunting the other team, taunting the Kirk Signetti. He said with the Google it. I mean, my goodness, he's turned into a bit of a arrogant bastard here now that he's playing for Ohio State after just being a standard kid.
Yeah, let's see if he wins the big games. The big one, you know what I mean? Then he can walk the walk. Right now he's just talking it.
Yep, no doubt. This is a big one because they will be definitely playoff bound. Well, certainly Big Ten championship bound with a win there against Michigan. All right, Rutgers and Michigan State. We've got Michigan State 1.5-point home favorites, 48 the total here in this game. Michigan State, not pretty, but they won against Purdue, although barely beating Purdue at home the way they did and hanging on like they did. Doesn't inspire confidence. I mean, but do I want to take Rutgers on the road here after what we saw last week from that defense, which just what an crazy, insane finish with them in Illinois. I mean, that fourth quarter just ended up being nuts, went off the rails. It's funny. The Athon Kaliak-Manis is finally starting to play some good football. Now the defense can't stop anything. That's been the problem here for Rutgers. The quarterbacks actually played probably some of the better football, and Monangai, the great running back, has been good, but suddenly the defense just continues to be an issue. Michigan State, they didn't play great defensively against Purdue. Purdue's offense is terrible, and they struggled at times. Maybe this isn't over here with these two teams. I lean that way. I don't have a strong opinion on the side. I think it's very much coin flippish, and that indicated by where this point spread is. C-Mac, what do you think?
That's how I feel. This ugly. I kind of lean Michigan State to get to 6 wins.
Yeah, they need bowl eligibility big time. Yeah, Rutgers already has that. Yep.
Yeah. I think they could figure and get it here at least home. That could be close, but with the number, they just need to win. So I think they can do that. And last week we talked about it. I mean, at least hats off to Purdue. 24-3 at halftime. Still the worst first half team, Purdue. They came kind of fighting back, and Michigan State do nothing in the second half. So yeah, this is one I really don't love, but I'd be on Michigan State or nothing.
Yeah, Aiden Childs before the first game of the year said bet the over. Well, you better start playing fucking 4 quarters of football.
Oh, geez.
For that to happen.
Don't listen to him.
Half, and then he plays one disaster half, and we saw it again last week against lowly Purdue. He had a great first half, and what the fuck happened to him in the second half? He was terrible, missing receivers, inaccurate, bad decisions against Purdue.
The more you talk about it too, like I don't want it back. Like I don't want my fucking money on him. Like it's like I don't want my money on Kaliak-Manis. Like it's just goddamn. Too cold. This is gonna be cold, windy. Nah.
Typical ugly Big Ten football. It sounds like. All right, Territorial Cup, Arizona State, Arizona. We've got Arizona State 8.5-point road favorites, 53.5 the total. They're the better team, and they should win this game. But crazier things can happen. It is rivalry. It's Arizona is they had a great couple weeks ago against Houston. I don't know what happened to them against TCU. Back to the doormat last week against TCU. But, Fafita and company, they'll get up for this game, try to spoil Arizona State's Big 12 championship hopes. Remember, Arizona State's one of 2 teams that can control their own destiny. They win here, and they're in the Big 12 championship game. So we'll see if they can get the job done. I'm just not comfortable laying 8.5 in this spot. And I love Arizona State. I love me some Kenny Dillingham and some Sam Levitt and some Cam Scadaboo. And this team and their defense has gotten better as the season's gone on. I don't want to step in front of them, but I don't know if I want to lay 8.5 either, especially with the huge win against BYU, the thriller, where they thought they iced the game and put it away and threw the ball out of bounds with no time, but there was 1 second left. They had to review it. They stormed the field. They had to get everyone off the field because there was still 1 second left. They gave BYU one last chance at a Hail Mary to try to win the game. It fell short. I mean, that's an emotional roller coaster for Arizona State. Now you got to lay 8.5 with them in a rivalry game. Not exactly what I call a buy low spot, but I'm not going against them. They are the better team. So I probably don't get involved. What do you think here, CMAC? ASU, Arizona.
Yeah, this was it's kind of stinks. Like, especially the Arizona has nothing but just to beat them. They're right, like just shove it to them. That's where
Arizona. Yep.
That's where I'd be. And Arizona State, congrats to everyone that had. And I don't know if you really want to be laying it like you said, Babano. Been making all this money on them really all year. 9-2 ATS versus 2-9. Like, this smells take Arizona, which is horrible. Which they just gave up 49 points
2 years in a row. Now you could say they just own them and they'll play them tough again, or you could say Arizona State's now finally the better team and they're going to want to flex their muscles and destroy this team. We'll see which one it is.
That's true. And this Arizona, the defense needs to be somewhat better. And I talked about earlier, Conley, they got to try to run it here a little bit and get something going on the ground to help out. Like, they just can't leave it to just be throwing it.
Right.
Yeah. And before kind of the last month, after the bye, that offense looked out of wax, throwing it even. I didn't love what I was seeing. I told you about. So, but this is dangerous here. And why is this not? After they've gotten their ass kicked, why is this not over 10 too? Like, why isn't this 10.5, 11? It seems like with these two teams, I think Arizona could be live here.
It's possible. They have won each of the last 2 meetings in this rivalry against Arizona State. This is going to be like because there's no bowling for Arizona. They win this game, they're still only at 5 wins. This is as good as it gets for them as far as any sort of huge game for them to try to spoil Arizona State's potential to be in the playoff and in the Big 12 championship game. All right, Houston and BYU, another Big 12 team alive, but BYU does not control their own destiny, whereas Arizona State does. BYU needs to win and get some help, but it starts with a game they have to win against Houston, 13 to have any chance. BYU, 13-point home favorites, 41 the total in this game. Give me Willie Fritz in Houston here, plus 13. I mean, I know BYU's got to win this, but doesn't mean they have to win by margin. And I wonder where their heads are at. They didn't start that game well. I know they made it close against Arizona State late with a good second half, but where was that in the first half? Like, what the hell happened to BYU? How do you come out like that so bad, right, in the first half? And, it's certainly trending in the wrong direction. That's 2 losses in a row. That's 3 non-covers in a row for BYU, going back to the 1-point win against Utah. You're seeing the defense start to unravel a bit, give up more points, more big plays. The offense is been not nearly as efficient of late. We like, Retzlaff's capable with LJ Martin running the ball, capable. We like the 2 receivers with Darius Lassiter, Chase Roberts. We like them, but at the same point in time, they're just not clicking right now. The last few games, like we saw earlier in the year, and they not only have to win, they got to win handily here. Now, I know it's in Provo, and Houston's a Jekyll and Hyde, box of chocolates, Forrest Gump, this team. You don't know what you're going to get. They have that miserable game against Arizona, but they actually hung tough, and their defense played better against this Baylor team that was lighting everybody up, and they actually did a good job holding Baylor's offense down. I mean, they only had barely over 300 yards, Sawyer Robertson, and that great Baylor offense that was lighting it up. So you got to credit Houston's defense. And I just feel, for Willie Fritz and Houston, even though they've been all over the map, and I don't love what I'm seeing, continue to see from Zion Chris, the quarterback. 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. I mean, he ain't it. They're going to have to find a quarterback. Willie Fritz is going to have to find himself a quarterback because he doesn't have one right now on his roster. That being said, I'd still lean to Houston here, plus 13 in a game that I think they're going to come wanting and looking to play spoiler. What do you think here, CMAC, Houston, BYU?
Yeah, maybe. And kind of the lore early on, BYU at home covers numbers was good. The last couple they haven't. Even going back to Oklahoma State, And also, this is why I'm on it. Even with this number, under Houston, it's 10-1. There's like say because it's an under 1-10 to the under. It just keeps winning for me. And BYU's numbers, like overall, they've had some high scoring games, but they've had great games to keep it down. But their overall defense, 27, it's been pretty good against the run and the pass. I know all year long. I don't know how BYU really gets it going and scores a ton. Even at 42 here, 41.5, I think it stays under. Just give me that. I'm not going to mess around. I think Houston can. Because of that, that keeps them alive. Can the offense do a little bit to just, and that'll keep them, maybe covering this number within 2 touchdowns. And BYU on a skid, ATS too, after starting the year. What have they lost? 4 straight?
Well, 3 straight ATS. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 straight ATS, 4 or 5.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yep. Not the suddenly the bloom coming off the BYU rose just a little bit.
I know. It was great early. I'm glad I haven't been all over. That over got there. I like that over last week. Just got there with Arizona State.
Yeah, it just barely did, but we'll take it, no doubt. All right, next up, we've got Fresno State and UCLA. How about this? Last week, non-conference matchup here. We've got Mountain West versus Big Ten. UCLA, 9.5-point home favorites, 46.5 the total in this game. Now, you got to wonder, UCLA, a tough battle. And I was impressed with the intensity with USC, UCLA last week. UCLA is obviously rebuilding a little bit. USC's had a disappointing season by their standards, like not even close to the Big 12, Big 10 championship or the Pac-12 or the playoff at all. But that was great intensity from those two teams. It was a good game, well played, 19-13 win for USC. It was a defensive battle. UCLA played them even, but then some mistakes from Ethan Garbers late in the game. Stopped on that 4th down, ended up really hurting them. And I feel bad for the UCLA backers. That decision to go for it, 4th and 1 on their own territory when they were down, that led to the touchdown that covered the point spread or the field goal, I should say, that covered the point spread for USC in that game. Trying to bounce back from a tough rivalry loss and now being asked to lay 9.5. Keep in mind this great point spread run of UCLA, all as underdogs, where they've gone 6-3 against the spread their last 9 games. In fact, if you go back and look, UCLA hasn't been favored since the very first game they played this season, which was all the way back in August at Iowa. They were 13.5-point favorites. They escaped by the skin of their teeth and won by 3. So it's the only time they've been favored other than this game. And look, Fresno, a team that was struggling, but they got healthy over the bye week. And you could see their defense played a lot better. Mikey Keene was a lot more effective, as was the offense for the Bulldogs. We'll see if, and they're going to be excited to play against UCLA. They beat UCLA 40-37 just 3 years ago. They won outright here as 11-point dogs. This is a Fresno or pass spot for me. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to be on Fresno here in this game. And right now there are no 10s, right?
Yeah, 9.5 across the board. Yep.
Yeah. God damn it! If I can find a 10, I will be on them in this game. They've had a couple, at UNLV where they got their ass kicked, and then before the bye versus Air Force. Hey, shout out to Air Force playing a lot better, winning football games without a passing yard. Got to give kudos to that. But man, old school, I love it. But Keene's been good enough to seem 6-5. I think they're going to be ready for this after the win last week. And I have to say that you talked about the Wake Forest loss. This was the worst loss too at the end of the night, which was UCLA. It's still a good college weekend, but they're winning that whole game. Garbers is doing everything that I want him. He's not turning the ball over. I mean, the defense is playing well. It was just crazy. They took a 10-9 third quarter. Then they go up another field goal, 13-9. Then there was that touchdown. They just couldn't do anything there late, and that was the shits. And they just couldn't do it. SC tacked on that field goal. So everyone that had SC, man, that was one you had to feel just unreal to cover by just a point, because I thought it was a great football game. Mayava finally had a big a big series where we went down and scored that touchdown. So kudos to him. He was running and made some big plays and big throws. But going back, I take it again. They could have ran a little bit better, but 20 of 29 for Garbers, 265 and a touchdown. Yeah, this game was so even for it to be, but that's how football goes. There's one winner, one loser, one team that covers and doesn't.
Yep. And this week we think it won't be UCLA covering again because both Connor and I lean in with Fresno State here in this one. All right, West Virginia, Texas Tech, 3.5-point home favorites, 65 of the total. Don't look now. West Virginia, another one of these cases where we thought, looks like they are ready to call it a season. And suddenly they've risen up here from the ashes 2 weeks in a row. Well, they were competitive against. Actually, it's been more than that. 3-1 their last 4 games. A big win against UCF at home. So the effort's been good. And I think Garrett Green getting benched and then coming back in as the quarterback kind of gave him some new life, new perspective. Like, hey, I got to be better. And he has played better. Now, the defense still does worry me. And we know Texas Tech can absolutely score points in bunches with Baron Morton, Taj Brooks, Caleb Douglas. I mean, they've got a great trio there, receiver, running back, and quarterback. I like the over for sure. I definitely think we're going to see points here scored in this game. But 3.5, I kind of lean at north of the field goal number. I kind of lean West Virginia here. I mean, they've kind of shown some late life here late in the season, which you like to see. Not to mention, the fact that they got bowl eligible last week. To get to bowl eligibility when it wasn't looking good at one point, you got to give them credit. So I lean to the dog and like the over here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm off here. That was just one where West Virginia I thought couldn't get it done, but they hadn't played kind of a team like UCF at home to win, where they've just been flat and haven't got it done, and they do. That was one I was just wishing I had money line on them last week. I think this will be tough. I agree with you. I'd lean over. I just think we're a little high here at this number. But shit, it still could get there. Both these defenses are awful. So is Texas Tech. One spot with Texas Tech has been pretty good. Don't love the hook. Is at home. I've backed them, plenty of times. Kind of small numbers where they've covered for me. But I got to pass here. I don't want anything in this one. But I definitely think we get points.
All right, Oklahoma and LSU. LSU 6-point home favorites, 47 the total. This is a night game in Baton Rouge, so we know that's usually an advantage for LSU, but they didn't cover last week against Vanderbilt. They won, but they didn't cover against Vanderbilt. I'm still not laying 6 with LSU. I can't, with obviously all their dreams crushed 2 weeks ago, out of the SEC title picture, out of the playoff picture. And look, Oklahoma showed obviously great life when they were struggling. And really they did against Missouri too, back-to-back weeks. But the huge win again, the only concern, because I lean Oklahoma, such a huge monumental upset against Alabama last week to really probably crush Alabama's chances. And now can you go on the road after a win like that and show up again? And look, I got to give the offense credit. They did some tricks and gimmicks, and they tried to be very versatile, and it was actually a good play calling game, and it got Oklahoma going a bit. And look, their defense, give them all the credit. They completely bottled up Alabama. They could do it again. I can't lay it with LSU. It's take the points with Oklahoma or pass, but I got to admit, I'm worried about the spot a little bit for Oklahoma after the emotional win last week that they just fall flat here a little bit on the road. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, they're going to need that defense again. Like, they're going to need them to play big in night game for LSU.
Well, if you can fluster Milroe into mistakes, you can certainly fluster Nussmeier into mistakes because we know he's made his share of them. Yeah,
for sure. This number seems crazy low with these two teams, but that's why I think it's a little bit too low to take the under. If this was higher, I'd be on it. This was in that 51 range. I'd be all over this under with Oklahoma. And LSU is just not playing at a crazy pace and getting up and down. The defense is somewhat better. That's why they haven't been going over all year. Yeah, the trick play, they ran the ball solid. I mean, Arnold did. He was 9 of 11 for 68 yards, but he ran for 131. Robinson had 107 and a couple touchdowns. They got the pick six. Did Oklahoma, and that was it. I mean, Bama just boggled down. And Milroe looked, man, they had him 11 to 26, 164 and 3 picks. Not good. So I just can't. This was one I need over the touchdown to even look their way, and it's tough to say that after a big home win to go to LSU. So I'll be off. Lean under.
All right, we got next up. It is Kansas and Baylor. We got Baylor 1-point home favorites, 61.5 the total. I'm not stepping in front of Kansas, clearly. This has been a late season resurgence for Lance Leipold's crew. It's Devin Neal running the ball. It's Jalen Daniels finally playing like he did last year. Here in the last few games, he's playing extremely well. Baylor, though, is another team. It's hard to step in front of them. They're on a late season run as well with Sawyer Robertson in this offense. Baylor, 5-0 straight up, 5-0 against the spread their last 5 games. Kansas, 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread as well in their last 5 games. So 2 5-0 ATS teams in their last 5 games, both of them colliding here head-to-head in this game. So very tough side, in my opinion, to call. Well, the problem is Baylor just beat Houston. They're at home. Kansas is off the Colorado win, which really greatly hurt and damaged and lessened Colorado's hopes to win the Big 12 championship. Is there maybe more of a letdown for Kansas in this game than there is for Baylor? Maybe for that reason, I'll lean slightly to Baylor, but I don't think I want to bet against either of these teams. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, man, both teams just playing well. And it kind of, because we talked about, I'm like, Kansas wins, then they're going to be really up to want to go to a bowl game.
That's the thing. Bowl eligibility at stake for Kansas. They're playing like they want it.
Big time. Because normally this has been horrible. Like, and Baylor's kind of just owned Kansas. They have not beat them in forever. Forever, it seems like. And Kansas has a lot of bad football teams for years and years and years. Baylor's been better. This Baylor offense has been humming. That's why it's too tough for me, because I think Baylor wins, but Kansas playing well and wants the bowl game, so it's tough for me. I think it still can get over this number. Baylor back after the under to Houston.
Houston
Kansas
drags everyone into unders, so keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah. Drags it down. I think we get enough points. This is more like what we had, and even more they'll be able to score because the Baylor defense is not great. It looks great against Chris and that Houston offense, but it'll give up plenty. So this is low enough. I think it's gettable, the over 61.
All right, California and SMU. We've got SMU 13.5-point home favorites, 57 the total in this one. Now, SMU's in the ACC championship game. That's confirmed. So is this a go-all-out spot for SMU? I'm not so sure. That's why I'd be hesitant to lay the points, but do I want to take Cal? West Coast to East Coast trip. Well, not all the way East Coast. West Coast to the Midwest, because Dallas. Still a lot of travel. Off the emotional comeback win against Stanford. You all saw the interview with Fernando Mendoza after that game, quarterback for Cal. Emotional. Do they have anything left in the emotional physical reserve here in this to take on, obviously, a juggernaut SMU team that has just been on an absolute heater down the stretch? That's the question. So probably not a game I touch, other than maybe I look at an SMU team total just because Jennings in that offense, they're definitely playing in peak form right now offensively. What do you think here, C-Mac, Cal, SMU?
Yeah, I could see, like, SMU takes care of the ball. Like, yeah, I could see them covering this number, but because it's not huge, like, this game, they gotta win. I can't take them. Like, I've seen enough, and I've seen enough of them when they've been riding high and playing well, but the turnovers, like, has been there. Even BC, who covered that game, they were laying, what, 17 or 18. I just can't do it. This is a pass for me too. And this was maybe over the 2 touchdowns. I think Cal could be a look, because I think their offense could hang around here. That defense for Cal has just really gone up and down. You know, it's just been so up and down. Early in the year, it had some good games, you know, like at Auburn, a few of these, and then they've gotten gashed. And they've been a team where it's just not been focused. They've had leads that they've blown, and I mean, talk about, yeah, it's so tough. I think Cal, though. I think the points.
All right, this is a great one. This is basically battle to get in the SEC championship game right here. Texas A&M. Texas Longhorns, 6-point road favorites, 48.5 the total. Game is at Kyle Field here in College Station. Look, everyone's going to jump off Texas A&M and their bandwagon right after the loss to Auburn last week. Painful loss. They had a brutal start. And look, they did everything they could to try to battle back, come back and win. But just unfortunate that they get a 2-point conversion, Auburn, and Texas A&M can't convert on theirs. That ends up being the difference, and they lose that game in overtime. But the good news is, because it was only their second conference loss, A&M still controls their fate here. They win this game, they're in the SEC championship game, and obviously they win that, they're in the playoff, and they still might be in the playoff. Well, I don't know if they'd be in the playoff if they lose this game, but it's still there for the taking for A&M, but won't be easy. Texas obviously has played great all season, still just the one loss to Georgia. They've bounced back, and they've won every game since then, but not necessarily from a point spread standpoint. Just 1-4 ATS the last 5 games for Texas. Didn't cover against Vandy, won by 3. They did get the cover against Florida, but that one cover, Florida was down to like the third-string quarterback out of the Ivy League school, Aiden Warner, in that game. And so keep that in mind. Then the other games they didn't cover. At Arkansas, they only won by 10. And then Kentucky last week, they won by 17, but Kentucky pretty much wire-to-wire point spread cover, getting 3 touchdowns. Quinn Ewers certainly and that offense are very capable, but they're an offense that gradually moves the ball down the field. They've got obviously Wisner and Blue running the ball, Matthew Golden, Gunnar Helm, great tight end, Silas Bolden, Isaiah Bond. They got certainly Ryan Wingo, a lot of good receivers. But they haven't been exactly ripping it up and as efficient on offense as they've needed to be because look, they've had trouble covering some of these bigger numbers. A&M at home's a tough place. I think they rally the troops after the Auburn loss, and I don't know about win the game, but I feel this is a down-to-the-wire field goal game either way. I'm going to take A&M here plus the points. Lean under as well. C-Mac, what do you think?
I think it is too. As bad as the loss, was, and it showed in that line we talked about, in Auburn, and that went down to 1 for a while, and it moved back up right before kickoff to 2.5.
Shocking how bad their defense was against Auburn, but I think hopefully,
especially early,
nip that in the bud this week. Yeah,
especially right away. That first quarter, so the first half was like, what? You're letting Auburn Thorne throw all over you and shit? Like, what the hell is going on? And Texas lately
played well to try to get him back.
Yeah, to get him back. Texas just hasn't, covered any numbers. Like, if they had been winning bigger, I think you'd have way over this touchdown too, Pavano. But these games, 31-14, Kentucky slides in there, Arkansas. One thing they've held their hat on, and that I think, and that's why they've been so good, and there hasn't been really the blip other than Georgia's their defense. You know what I mean? And that brings them, and that's why I think this game is close. Because I like this under, but this total's a little bit low, just because A&M's been going over a lot of these games. You know what I mean? The New Mexico State game, of course, they went 38-3, the kind of off week these SEC teams have, Pavano against these teams. But other than that, all the games have really got over this. But I lean under in what I think, is a close game, and lean A&M.
All right, A&M and the under leans here for C-Mac in this one. All right, next up as we continue along, Louisville and Kentucky, another rivalry game here. Louisville, 3.5-point road favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. Kentucky, as we mentioned, defensively they did enough to hang in there, but you just didn't get, as usual, enough from Brock Vandegrift and the offense to really threaten Texas as far as the outright win, but they do get the point spread cover, though, in that game against Texas. We'll see how they fare. It's actually 3-point spread covers in a row now for Kentucky, and they have owned Louisville. Even good Louisville teams, like last year, Louisville had a great team. Jeff Brom had a great team, and Kentucky still beat them 38-31, winning outright a 7.5-point dog. This is Kentucky or pass for me at 3.5 as a home underdog. And I don't think this Louisville defense is as good as we've seen it in the past either. Now, I know they beat up on Pitt last week, 37-9, but Pitt was compromised, I think, once Holstein went down. and Pitt, too, has not played as well down the stretch. We just see no evidence of Louisville having an easy time of it. Never mind easy time of it. They haven't won in multiple occasions against Kentucky, and now you got to lay 3.5 with them here on the road. Not for me. Kentucky or pass for this better. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought about last week. I thought it's a good bounce back for Louisville against Pitt, and it was. This has just been the struggle, for them. And you're going to give me 3.5, here with Kentucky with a better defense. Even though you got this offense, you got to kind of take. But I think they can kind of like bog down, chugging this offense enough. So I am on Kentucky plus the 3.5, and I lean under in this game as well.
Strength on strength, weakness on weakness. Kentucky's offense is weaker, and Louisville defense is weaker for them. But the strengths are the offense for Louisville and the defense for Kentucky. Who are going to win those matchups?
Yeah, real quick, Kentucky slipped in and got that cover, but I wanted to touch on Texas. That's why it's like, why is that line so short? Even in those games, like it covers that 6. Like they beat Arkansas. Of course, they were laying bigger numbers. I just mean, so that's a little head scratching too. Like they still beat Arkansas by 10. They still beat, Kentucky, all these schools. So that's another reason when I was going through this last night. Like, why is this 6? In that game, Texas.
Missouri, 3.5-point home favorites against Arkansas. Another SEC rivalry game, 54.5 the total in this one. Arkansas coming off a non-conference game against Louisiana Tech, 35-14. They get the win in that game. If you look at the box score, though, they did move the ball pretty well. But Louisiana Tech was able to have some success throwing it on them, 190 passing yards. They couldn't run it, but they were able to throw it a little bit. Missouri coming off the 39-20 win against Mississippi State in their last game. Of course, their last home game, they beat Oklahoma, and in fact, they're 6-0 at home this season, Missouri, here at Faro Field. And I'm leaning, look, the money's come in on Arkansas, and usually I like to take points. I'd be leaning to the Missouri side. This is not your average senior night. This is Brady Cook. He's meant so much to this team. We saw him come back from injury in a game and beat Auburn. And they're going to honor him and do the whole ceremony, for the seniors, and he's one of them. And you just know, I think this is more of a senior night that means something to Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz's team. They've owned Arkansas head-to-head as well. They've won, obviously, each of the last 2 meetings, and 8-2 straight up the last 10 meetings versus Arkansas. And I think the line's now getting cheap enough at 3.5 where I'm interested in Missouri now at the current number. This is a special senior class led by Brady Cook for the final regular season home game. I think that matters here to Missouri, and I still think they're a better team than Arkansas. Arkansas is just too flighty, too inconsistent for me, both sides of the ball. What do you think here, C-Mac? Arkansas, Missouri?
Yeah, they have been, this Arkansas team. If I get to 3, I'm going to move on Missouri here, but man, at home, I think they do win big. Like Arkansas got to 6-5. Missouri's been a lot better at home, and I love this team. And a little bit of frauds, especially their defense good, not great. The crazy game with Oklahoma at home, but they beat Auburn by 4. Like I think it's light. You're talking about. I get a 3. I'll move on them. I lean under too. Especially if this Arkansas defense comes to play. It will be but I've seen them get ripped. I've seen them look great, and I'm like, what is this defense at times? Sometimes these teams just scratch my head, like, what's going on? But they come to play. It's definitely staying under. So yeah, if I get 3, I'm on it, and I lean under.
All right, Iron Bowl, Auburn and Alabama. We've got Alabama 11.5-point home favorites, 52 the total. Here in this game, what can you say about Auburn? Great win, hell of a performance, beating Texas A&M at home. And certainly the first thought is, if you're beating Texas A&M at home, and we just saw what Alabama did last week, don't you have to be on Auburn here? And we know Auburn sometimes can give Alabama problems in this rivalry. That being said, a lot of the problems have been in Auburn, not necessarily in Alabama, because if you actually look at the games in Alabama, Alabama's destroyed Auburn multiple times. But this is a different Alabama team, clearly. Obviously, it's not Nick Saban anymore. It's Kalen DeBoer. We know it's Jalen Milroe that's had the great game against LSU, had the great game as well against Missouri. But my gosh, I was mortified what we saw from them against Oklahoma last week. Couldn't believe how bad it was for him. 3 interceptions. The run game, the quarterback run game was completely shut down by Oklahoma's defense in that game. The question is, can Auburn's defense replicate that and keep Jalen Milroe from going off running the football? Their run defense has actually been good, 20th, only giving up 110 rushing yards per game, Auburn. So, I mean, and we didn't see Alabama necessarily. The last time they had this crushing loss, CMAC, or one of the other, they had the Vanderbilt loss, and then they came home and played South Carolina, and they escaped with a 2-point win. Didn't even come close to covering. Now, they did have the Tennessee loss, and they beat up on Missouri the next game, but then that was the game Brady Cook got injured, and Drew Pine had to take over, and he was horrible.
That was one of the worst.
That's what allowed Alabama to probably pull away and blow them out. Until then, it was a close game, and when Brady Cook was in there. So I probably have to lean Auburn here just by default, because you assume Alabama off a loss and a rivalry game beat the hell out of Auburn. First of all, Auburn's playing better. They're running the ball. Thorne's been a little bit better. Their defense is capable. And Alabama, when they played Vandy, their first loss, they didn't bounce. Well, they did, but they won by 2. They escaped South Carolina at home. And then the Missouri game off the loss to Tennessee, but that game was close. And then Brady Cook got injured. Drew Pine, who's terrible, took over.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's only then is when the game got away from Missouri, and Alabama romped in that game. It was close when Cook was in the game. So I probably have to lean Auburn plus 11.5. It's difficult after what I saw last week to lay 11.5. I know it's recency bias, but it's true. Not good from the Alabama offense in particular. What do you think here, CMAC Iron Bowl?
Yeah, Iron Bowl. See, one thing with Alabama, with Saban off a loss, was they were golden. Just different times now. What is that going to be consistently with the board going forward? We will find out. I think they do play better. This has just been classic with Auburn's been good the last 10 years, or some down years. They've gotten blown out, or these games are tight as fuck. They're super close. They've even won, or they barely lose. And I think they can cover this number. I hate taking Peyton Thorne. For one spot, he beats up on bad teams. These teams like Mercer, whoever that come in, they play, or as a dog. You just can't take him laying points ever, I don't think. And I still worry about him with the mistake. But why I think Auburn is in this, they're the defense, the numbers here. I mean, Bama's got a solid defense too. When you look at everything, Auburn's offense can run it. I think they're in this. Unless we get an Alabama team that's so pissed off and comes out blazing here. I could see that too, but my leans as well. I mean, how do you not get up here? All right, well, Auburn, Bama. Yeah, Auburn for me or nothing.
All right, Auburn lean for CMAC in this one. All right, next up, Kansas State, Iowa State. Iowa State 3-point home favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. Iowa State is the other Big 12 team like Arizona State that can control their own destiny. Win, and they're in the Big 12 championship game. It's that simple for Iowa State here. But Kansas State's no pushover. We know that. And that's going to – and by the way, Kansas State, they actually still have a smidgen of hope to get in the Big 12 championship game. They need losses by Arizona State, BYU, and Colorado, and they have to beat Kansas State, or then they have to beat Iowa State, and have the other 3 teams all lose, plus have a Baylor loss. Make sense of that if you can, to get in Kansas State. But that is a small pathway. So Kansas State, you're telling me there's a chance, right? The Dumb and Dumber line, Jim Carrey. Yeah, there is a chance for Kansas State. It's slim as fuck. It's like 1-2% chance, but it's at least a chance. But for Iowa State, it's win, and they're in the Big 12 championship. Again, be careful with this must-win. Like if Iowa State, we got to bet Iowa State. They got to win this game. Doesn't that always mean they will win? And, Kansas State is a tough team. And Iowa State hasn't, they've been just finding ways to win here. These last few, including last week against Utah on the road. And I like Rocco Becht, but, the defense hasn't been shutting it down nearly as effectively the last few weeks. They give up the 45 to Kansas. They lose to Texas Tech. Like I said, they escaped Utah last week, 31-28. K-State pummeled Cincinnati, got back on track after 2 straight losses, 41-15. It was a great game from Giddens, who ran all over Cincinnati. Avery Johnson had a mistake-free, clean game. This is not an easy game, even at home in Ames for Iowa State. Be careful with this one. I'm actually leaning K-State +3, but I don't know if I'll bet it. C-Mac, what do you think here? K-State, Iowa State.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna to bet this game. I'd kind of lean that K-State could go in here and do it. Iowa State went there and beat them down. Will Howard at quarterback. Last year, there was a bunch of points in that game too. I wanted to 42-35. Lit it up. Giddens had a big game. I think he can have success. I've talked about this Iowa State defense. I think it's just okay. So I think, I'd look out. Iowa State, they're at home. You win this, but that doesn't mean, must win for them. But K-State's they've been up and down. Those bad losses, at Houston, then they come home and lay the egg to Arizona State. And they've been, Colorado win on the road, West Virginia, down year, and then the shitty BYU loss earlier in the season. So just too much. I don't know what we get here at all. And the line's too short. I think they're live, though. I'd look out. Iowa State here in this game.
I'd look out, too. I'm looking at Iowa State against Cincy and Kansas. Kansas had 237 rushing yards.
On the ground. They're insane if you go through them.
Yep.
Cincinnati. It's like the last 6 games, yeah.
Even though Iowa State won against Cincinnati, Cincinnati had 287 rushing yards, 141 from the quarterback, Sorsby, and 120 from Corey Kiner on the ground. And K-State is a run-first offense. You better believe it, with Giddens and what Avery Johnson can do with his legs, too. This is a scary matchup for that Iowa State run defense, which just got shredded by Kansas and Cincinnati recently. Scary.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
They give it up to UCF, too.
K-State wins this game. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's why they played kind of some easy schedule early on, but those last 5 or 6 weeks, they've gotten gashed at times, that run defense. Yeah.
Which plays right into Kansas State's hands and what they want to do. All right, Washington and Oregon. Oregon, 19-point home favorites, 50.5, 51 the total in this game. I think this is going to become the new rivalry because they played Oregon State and Oregon earlier in the year. Normally, this would be the Civil War this weekend, but they played it earlier in the year. So maybe they're going to make Washington, Oregon, the new rivalry here late in the season. But either way, we've got it. Oregon coming off a bye week because they played Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. All of a sudden, they've failed to cover in 2 straight games, Oregon. Against Maryland and Wisconsin, they won both games, but they not enough to cover the number. Washington's also off a bye because they played UCLA a couple weeks ago at home, 31-19. Here's the issue with Washington. I don't know if I can trust them on the road. 4 Big Ten road games.
Yeah, it's the road.
Against the spread. And in 3 of them, they've been blown out. They lose by 24 at Iowa, they lose by 14 at Indiana, and they lose by 29 at Penn State. Not even competitive in any of these road games, and Oregon might be the best of the bunch. So, can't do it. I don't know if I'm going to lay it with Oregon because the point spread has seemed to catch up to them the last couple games they failed to cover. I don't know if we're at that time. We're at the time of the year where I wonder if there's value anymore with Oregon. There may not be, but I don't know if I can trust this offense, especially of Washington, enough on the road to be able to put up enough points to get me inside at this kind of a number. Maybe a lean to the under, but it's scary sometimes even with Oregon games to go under based on the fact that they can just rip off big plays on offense at any given moment. By the way, head-to-head, I know last year this was the Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer Washington teams. Washington did win both meetings last year, including in the Pac-12 championship game. You got to think Oregon now remembers that and says, even though it's a different Washington team, brand new coaching staff, a lot of new players, new faces, we may want to put a step on the neck of this team, Washington, after what they did to us last year. What do you think here, C-Mac? Washington, Oregon.
Yeah, I can't take Washington. I look at this. They've just been horrible on the road. They've just been a different team. And then there's the problem lately with Rogers and Williams, the other quarterback. Even with that win against UCLA, because they went to it the week before. Yeah, Williams played too because Rogers had 2 picks in that game. I don't love that they're going back and forth at all too. Not in Rogers, just he is what he is. Oregon could win this huge, and they remember that. I was happy last year to have Washington in those 2 games. So Yeah, it seems like Oregon wins. It's just if they cover in this game. Washington, the road numbers are just ugly. Ugly.
Ugly on the road. You're absolutely right. You're no question about that.
Oregon wants style points too a little bit. I think. I mean, they haven't really all year. They've just gone up and sat on some leads. And some teams cover that way. Like that's could be weird here. It's just a little flighty. The whole I just gotta be off.
All right, no problem there. All right, Purdue and Indiana, the old Oak and Bucket rivalry game. Indiana 29-point home favorites, 56.5 the total. So this could go one of two ways. Either they're totally disheveled, crestfallen, kind of a kick in the gut. They thought they were good enough to compete with Ohio State and end this rhetoric that they haven't faced anybody. And obviously, look, Ohio State took care of business. I'm not so sure this is a down in the dumps Indiana team when you have a guy like Kurt Cignetti, though, as your head coach. I think he can pump up the troops again here. And plus, style points matter. Like, there's still talk Indiana with all these upsets last week. Still, there's a path for them to be in the playoff, even if they don't play.
I think they could get a
game.
Big win here.
One loss. They've beaten, even though it's been a soft schedule, they beat the shit out of every bad team they played. Why can't they beat the shit out of this Purdue team? Which continues to be bad. Now, last week they competed with Michigan State, but you can't even put Michigan State and Indiana on the same planet right now. Too many mistakes. You're right. I thought they hung in there. They got the early touchdown. They got a 7-0 lead, Indiana, very early in that game as well. And then you're right, mistakes, and the defensive line wreaked havoc for Ohio State. That ended up being a big problem. This, to me, is lay it or don't play it. I can't back Purdue. I won't back Purdue. And Indiana might be wanting to kick the shit out of somebody, and this is the opponent they're capable of doing it against. What do you think here, C-Mac? Purdue, Indiana.
That's how I feel. Like I'm not going crazy here to just rush to lay it because I think, and they want to beat up a team like this Purdue team. This used to be a good rivalry and good games. Normally, Purdue's just that bad this year. And one spot with Purdue, even though it didn't work with Illinois and Michigan State, they got their ass kicked in the first half. There's been one spot, 2 games, they came back, but the rest they've gotten drilled. So can they do anything? I mean, this team's just been. This is the worst Purdue football team I have ever seen. Like, they were bad last year. This is the worst ever. Indiana, yeah, they want to win 56-7. Just kind of like they beat Nebraska, because those wins are still big. Like, they beat up Washington 31-17, Michigan. Like, those still matter. And yeah, win big here, they'll be in the playoff. They'll be right there in the lower seed.
Yeah, no doubt. To me, it matters to Indiana to get this, run up this score, and win by 31. Hell, win by 38. Win by 45 if you can. Because if you do that, I think it shows everyone that you can come out and put that behind you. And again, you can only play who you play on your schedule, and you never know. Let's see where the chips fall in these other, let's see what happens to Georgia this weekend against Georgia Tech. Let's see what happens to Tennessee this weekend against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
You would think those two teams win, but these are rivalry games, and you throw records out the window in these spots and in these matchups, and anything can happen. And then all of a sudden, the door opens ajar for a team like Indiana to get in the playoff, even with the one loss being the one, by far toughest game on their schedule, Ohio State. If they can pump a team like Purdue this weekend, Indiana could still be in the mix. So there's incentive to pile on margin in this game if you're Indiana, and you get the chance to. All right, next up, we've got Maryland and Penn State. Penn State 24.5 point home favorites. The total in this one, 50, pretty much across the board here in this one. I'm done laying points with Penn State. All this James Franklin is a favorite. Stick that where the sun don't shine, as far as I'm concerned. All of a sudden, they haven't been as reliable in this favorites role. We saw that against Minnesota last week. We saw that obviously a couple of times. There was a UCLA game they didn't cover. Now, they had a couple of games where they did, Washington and Purdue, but they don't do it all every week now. Now, they are at home here against Maryland, and Maryland's not exactly a team I'm rushing to trust right now. 0-4 their last 4 games, just 1 point spread cover. They lose by 16 to Iowa. They lose by 14 to Rutgers, both of those at home. And now on the road, they lose by 21 at Oregon. They lose by 25 at Minnesota, by 14 at Indiana. It's been a rough go here for this Maryland team. Offense is kind of dissipated here down the stretch. They've been held below 20 points now in 3 straight games. That's probably not going to get it done against Penn State. It's probably a game I stay off. I don't want to lay it with Penn State in this price range, and I don't know if I'm trusting Maryland enough with what I've seen the last few weeks to take them, especially when the last 2 years between these teams, 81-15 cumulative score for Penn State over Maryland, 81-15.
Yeah.
The last 2 years combined.
This is they've really kicked Maryland's ass. Some of these, the last 10 or 15 years, like there have been some real ass kickings, and that could happen here. That's why this number's big. Like if this was under 3 touchdowns, it might be a way to go. Penn State, though, like you talked about, just the covers haven't been kind of there. It's been hit and miss all year, just 5 and 6 against the number. Like I think you'd go Penn State's team total. Like this total's a little, it's cold. The wind's not crazy. But, like, I think it just gets over, take Penn State's team total over here. I mean, I don't like they should be getting in the high 30s in this game. And Maryland's been an over team all year. Like, the only ones that did it, Northwestern, where they did, actually, that got over 37-10. So, and last week it just slipped over the 41. So, like, they scored just a couple touchdowns. Penn State does the rest. I think you can get over that. It's just too low.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be the case here. We'll see. Maybe just by, Penn State carries the way here for points.
I would look just theirs, but it still could get the full game over. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would lean over because I think Penn State can pile it on. You could get garbage points maybe from Maryland. And Maryland is still a little bit better offensively than they are defensively. All right, Wyoming and Washington State. We've got Washington State 17-point home favorites, 58.5 being the total here in this game. I mean, don't look now. Suddenly, Wyoming perking up a little bit, a little more competitive of late. No question about that. And look, we've now seen Washington State here the last couple of games just completely. They haven't been a great defense by any stretch this season, but what's happening to that defense the last couple of weeks in particular is just horrible. New Mexico, 38 points, although we like Dampier and the way he's played at quarterback for them. Still, you give up 38 and you lose as 10.5-point favorites. You lose outright. And same thing with Oregon State last week. Wazoo, 10.5-point favorites on the road. They lose outright, 41-38. Now, they are back in Pullman. They're 5-0 at home. They played really good football here at home. They annihilated Hawaii, Utah State at home, but they also barely beat San Jose State at home. Wyoming was pretty bad, and I think you initially could make the case that, yeah, Washington State beat Hawaii 42-10 at home, and Washington State beat Utah State 49-28 at home, that they could also beat Wyoming by this kind of a margin. But Wyoming made that quarterback change recently, and it's been for the better. They covered the number against San Jose State, covered the number against Utah State. They beat New Mexico outright. They fell barely short of the cover against Colorado State, and then they were wire to wire with Boise State right in that game, start to finish. So I'd be probably taking the points or nothing here with Wyoming. If his final home game, I do still worry about the Wyoming defense a little bit, which, obviously has had their issues throughout the course of the season. And if you look in particular, Wyoming's defense against the run has really suffered. And you're talking about a Washington State team with a great running quarterback in John Mateer. He can throw, but he's excellent using his legs, using his feet as well for this Washington State team. That could be a matchup concern here. I think there could be points in this game. 58.5 seems low for what we're seeing out of Washington State lately, on both sides of the ball. So I like the over more than anything, but I'll lean a little bit to Wyoming as well, plus 17. That's a lot of points for this faltering Washington State defense to be laying right now. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, that's just the lone thing. Like, I think even though the home is better for them, I would, watch laying the 17. Stick with the team total. With them, that's been the one consistent. Got there even last week with Oregon State, but all at home, Utah State 49, Hawaii 42, San Jose, that crazy game, 54-52. And earlier on the year, they beat Texas Tech 37. I mean, it seems like they're going to get to 40 here. So just go with the team total, which should be right below that number. It should be right around 38, this team total for Washington State. Wyoming, too, like, can they have some success? The problem is Wyoming's not a very good pass team. I mean, they're 105th, and that's probably giving them credit. Because Washington State, though, has been bad against the pass, 120 in the country, and 105 against the run. So Wyoming will have a little success, I think, running it. But if they had a good quarterback, like they could be in it if they could light it up. You know what I mean, Savannah? They just don't. They don't.
That's exactly it. No doubt. All right, we are down to our last 3 games of our biggest slate that we have had all year here on the College Football Hitting the Book show. Notre Dame and USC. We've got Notre Dame 7.5 point road favorites in the Coliseum, 51 the total. I mean, step in front of Notre Dame at your own risk right now. I mean, they have just been blowing teams out. They've been looking to pile on points. We saw that even against poor Army, hapless Army last week. And even then, Notre Dame's tacking on those extra points. USC's off the win against UCLA. Now, credit to them. That was a good defensive performance from them. Can they do that again against Riley Leonard and this Notre Dame offense, man? Riley Leonard is throwing the ball well. He's running it with
He's
it.
Healthy.
Jeremiah Love has been just phenomenal running the football for Notre Dame here these last few weeks. He's healthy. You can tell it looks that way. I don't want to step in front of Notre Dame. I just don't. They look like they're on they are on a mission here to punch their ticket to the college football playoff. And really that loss was a wake-up call because they have been just monstrous at 8-1 against the spread their last 9 games since that loss to Northern Illinois early in the season. They beat up USC 48-20 last year. Now, USC won here a couple years ago, but this USC team doesn't have Caleb Williams this time. Maiyava's a work in progress. Was he okay? Yes, since replacing Miller Moss, but I think it's a marginal difference. It's Notre Dame. It's lay it or don't play it for me. C-Mac, what do you think?
Well, I get it because Notre Dame, I mean, and this is the best ATS Notre Dame team I've seen in a very long time. To be 9-2 against the number, 10-1 since the loss. They do seem like they're on a mission. I think this week, though, is watch out. This would be huge. They go in there and win by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
You don't lay points often with Lincoln Riley. He's been very shaky, but the times he's been an underdog, he's been all right.
Penn State already. Notre Dame, too, has played nobody on the road.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech without Haynes King, but solid win, 31-13, horrible Purdue team. So this is it, and this is always great rivalry here, Notre Dame, SC. Maiyava, you got to basically, I think, back and SC's defense to at least be decent in this game. Like, can he make some big plays? Look, he did at the end of the game versus UCLA.
Yeah, ATS is a dog this year, USC. They beat LSU first week of the season outright as an underdog, and then the 3-point loss to Penn State as an underdog at home. And they were leading most of that game, too.
I'm going to wait on this, and I think there's just crazy love. Everyone's going to be on Notre Dame. I want to look into it a little bit more.
Now. I probably won't play it now. I'm not going against Notre Dame, but I'm a little bit more after seeing this USC dog success and this recent easier strength schedule that Notre Dame's had. I'm pumping the brakes maybe on Notre Dame now.
You know what I would have liked a lot better in this game, Vanna? It's not. I wish it was at night. At SC. This game's 3:30 Eastern, right?
Yeah, this is CBS. Gary Danielson, and Brad Nessler. That's their game on Saturday. CBS. Yeah.
This was at night. I'd be all over SC. I like it. I'm gonna look into it a little bit more. But no, I've loved Notre Dame. And people why they should have took them last week because Army's very bad. These teams, hats off to them. And I've never seen a Notre Dame team take care of business like this, especially lately, at least 10, 15 years against these bad teams. But yeah, SC here, but I think this could be tight.
Yeah, we'll see. But what only the bet the plus says though is that's why I lean Notre Dame. The eye test tells me Notre Dame's not just a little bit better than USC right now, maybe a lot better. And that's what initially attracted me to lay in the 7.
Yeah,
you're right. Those USC dog numbers
are
pretty good this year. Yeah.
Them as a dog, and there's Notre Dame going to a hostile against probably the best team they played. all year.
Yeah, no question. Yep. Nevada and UNLV battle for the Fremont Cannon. UNLV, it's simple. Win and you're playing Boise in the Mountain West Championship game next weekend. UNLV doesn't mean you have to win by 18 or more, though. 17.5-point home favorites, 55.5 the total. I took Nevada last week. I thought it was a good spot, against Air Force. I know Air Force playing better, but I thought Nevada could win that. It was disappointing performance from Nevada last week. Do I trust them here against UNLV on the road at Allegiant Stadium? There ends up being the big question. We've seen some weird results in the past, but this is clearly, a UNLV team that is one of the best teams that they've sent to this, Nevada UNLV rivalry game. Head-to-head last year, it was 45-27 for UNLV against Nevada. Remember, that was the first Barry Odom coached UNLV team. So, take everything before that with a grain of salt, where Nevada covered 3 in a row. When they played this caliber of UNLV team last year, Nevada, they lost 45-27, but they actually gained 474 total yards. And in fact, it was only a 44-yard advantage, plus 44 for UNLV in that game against Nevada. Boy, oh boy, I don't know if I trust. They look like they're kind of running. Maybe the over can get there. UNLV is going to score. Period. They absolutely will against Nevada. We saw.
Yeah, I lean over.
72 points in that. I feel better about that than either side. I think UNLV wins. I think it could be close to the number. I don't trust Nevada enough to take them, but the over, I could get there with that. I think that's probably the best approach for this game personally, because I do think Nevada's offense, even as shaky as it sometimes can be with Brendan Lewis, the Colorado transfer, he can be good sometimes, he can be awful other times. Might be able to move the ball a little bit in this one. We'll see if that is the case to help get that game over the total. What do you think here, CMAC, Nevada, UNLV?
Yeah, I think you could look to UNLV team total too, just because they run at 250 yards basically a game, 7th in the country, and Nevada's defense, they give up 180, 105. That's right there. They're going to get ripped here on the ground. This UNLV defense, though, has been pretty good against the run. They 17th, 104, and that's what Nevada wants to do. So I think they could have a little bit of success. This UNLV defense isn't great, but it's good. It bends, it doesn't break. It gets turnovers. They're top again. But man, I was looking yesterday, the day before, turnover margin, all that. They were top 10 last year. They're right there again. I think they were 3rd. UNLV again getting tons of turnovers. They win this game. This is always pretty good rivalry. I think Nevada could score too. That's why I think it could maybe, I could see them getting 20, 24 in this game, and it could get over. So I agree with you here. Over or UNLV team total over.
And I certainly don't trust Nevada's defense here at UNLV to stop Malik Williams.
No, they can't. I don't think they're going to be able to stop them. No,
not a defense that I fully trust. And you look at the Nevada defensive numbers, especially on the ground, they're giving up 179 rushing yards per game. And of course, they do like to run it too. And Malik Williams has that ability to not only throw it, but run it with the quarterback as well. All right, final game for this edition of Hitting the Books, New Mexico and Hawaii. This is your late night special, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, Saturday night. New Mexico 2-point road favorites, 61.5 the total in this game. Interesting spot when you look at this game. You've got New Mexico playing for bowl eligibility. That is significant. Everything I'm reading, Bronco Mendenhall and New Mexico want to get bowling. It would be a huge accomplishment for this program. There's some teams that treat getting to 6 wins like, you know what, we play in a minor bowl game, big deal. That's disappointment. For New Mexico, they'd love to get bowl eligible and be in one of those games after what we have seen. So they're coming to play. Are they good enough to go to the island here in Hawaii and win is the question, away from home for a team that is 3-3 on the road. They have had the San Diego State road win, the Utah State road win, and the New Mexico State road win. So they have beaten some teams. That's a pretty weak group. Hawaii, look, they're off the back-to-back losses to UNLV. Was a tough one here at Hawaii, 29-27. What a battle they gave UNLV. And then I don't know what happened to them at Utah State. They were awful. They got ripped on the defensive side of the ball, giving up almost 600 yards. What happened to Timmy Chang's defense there in that
I know.
game.
It's been pretty good all year.
Out of nowhere, just all of a sudden, because their defense had been battling, playing okay, Hawaii. And then all of a sudden, they just give up 55 in that game and get blasted 59-10 on the road by Utah State, who have not had a great season. But you look at the situationals going into this game. You've got, both teams are off a bye, so there's no advantage there. But New Mexico's got to travel to the island. Hawaii's at home, off the bye, extra time to prepare. You look at Hawaii the last couple home games, throw out the Boise one because Boise's in a class by themselves. But they won and covered against Nevada. They took UNLV, the next best team in the Mountain West, down to the wire, 29-27 here at home in Hawaii, lost by 2. This is not a gimme for New Mexico. Do they look like the better team right now? Yes. But Hawaii here in their last couple home games, they've shown me something. And I think they'd like to play spoiler here and try to keep New Mexico from getting to bowl eligibility. And it is their final home game for Shager, the quarterback, and a lot of these seniors here for the Hawaii Warriors, and they have a few of them. So buyer beware. New Mexico's got everything to play for. Bowl eligibility in particular, but must win doesn't equal will win. And Hawaii has shown up these last 2 home games. I think it's a tough game, quite honestly. The number's in a good spot. I know New Mexico's got a lot to play for, but I'm a little hesitant to go against Hawaii here at home. They've shown up here these last couple of home games. We'll see on Saturday if they do so one more time. C-Mac, what do you think? New Mexico, Hawaii.
This is tough because I think New Mexico could come in here and win. It's just not easy. And Hawaii off that horrible loss in the Lions too. Like I lean to Hawaii here. I don't love it. It's this game could be pretty good. It's just New Mexico a few years ago, Hawaii had, was down, but they won 28-21. And that could happen. But Hawaii, until that time their defense got ripped, had been playing well, keeping games under, keep staying in football games. I was on a couple Hawaii unders, but New Mexico's a dead over team. So tough one here. I just lean Hawaii. I don't know if I get to this here for a late night special.
New Mexico, a strong over team, and Hawaii was a strong under team, and even the last 2 Hawaii games have gone over the total against UNLV.
UNLV went over,
State. But again, be careful. This is a long way away from Saturday, and sometimes you get that wind kicking up there in Honolulu. And whenever it's a wind game in Hawaii, you're in trouble with it over. I'll tell you that. Yeah. And
this is a long way from New Mexico. That's why it's always a bitch. There is some wind, and got to check later in the week. But it looks like when will be blowing.
One thing too about New Mexico, their offense really relies more than anything on that run game, which is so good for New Mexico.
And Dampier.
They're not a great passing offense. That's something. So can they run the football is the key. And when you look at Hawaii, their run defense has been okay. It's not been terrible. It's not been great either. But they've been able to have those instances where they've been able to corral the run a little bit. We'll see if they can do that here in this matchup. It's the question of the last 2 games. It's been difficult for them, and UNLV put up 90 on the ground. That is a matchup concern. New Mexico is not UNLV level running the football, but that's their strength. And can Hawaii stop it is going to be the key if Hawaii is going to win the game. I mean, matchup-wise, I think it leans to New Mexico. Everything to play for, because I initially wanted to bet New Mexico here, but then I kept thinking, wow, this last game in Hawaii's been good at home, competitive at home the last 2 games. So not a gimme here for New Mexico. I lean that way, but I think I've taught myself out of betting it on Saturday night. There you have it. What a show. We've cleared the 3-hour mark with this edition of Hitting the Books, probably our longest show of the season, our most games on a single show this season for sure, but we had to. It was just so many big games. We had to cover them all. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. Come on, you got to hit that like button. We've been here for 3 hours for you, giving the best damn college football betting analysis anyone could possibly serve up. So hit that like button. That's all we ask. Subscribe to the channel. Again, next Monday, it's going to be like 1/3 of the length of this show. It'll be a nice short 1-hour type of show next week because it's only the 7 or 8 conference championship games coming up next week to talk about. So we're looking forward to that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I should say 10 conference championship games here because you got the group, actually 9, the group of 5 and the Power 4. So there's 9 conference championship games coming up next weekend next Monday, I should say, on the Hitting the Books College Football Show. But also make sure you join us Friday this week and every Friday moving forward, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific for the college basketball edition of Hitting the Books. We'll be doing those on Fridays for the rest of the year. And then once we get into January and football's behind us, we'll be doing 2, maybe even 3 shows a week with college basketball right here on the Hitting the Books channel. C-Mac, final thoughts before we wrap this show up. It's been a marathon.
This is it. But this is the last week with all these games. Had to do it. Like you said, everyone hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe if you haven't. We're getting up there. Once we can get it, we're almost at 500. From then on, a lot of people have hit us up. We can, you can send money. Maybe we might do a membership. We'll deal with that down the line. But shout out to everyone that's subscribed. Hit it if you can. We're almost there. We've grown it from the ground here to start. I think we're almost there. So subscribe and tell everyone to do that. And keep hitting in the chat. Send questions. Tell us what you bet or questions you have on games. I'll check the comments throughout the week. Let's have another one. The season is almost done here. Regular last big week here. Rivalry week. I love it. I love doing the show on Mondays, brother. Let's get out of here.
Lots of fun. What a great show. What a great week of games it's going to be. You're going to see some situations where it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But that's rivalry week. You're going to see at least a few games where it's like, wow, that team beat that team. You throw the records out, seriously, in some of these games. And oftentimes anything can happen when you get all of these rivalry matchups. But great stuff. Awesome show. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it very much. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been another edition of the College Football Hitting the Book Show. Enjoy the games and good luck. Enjoy this final full week of the college football regular season. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you next Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of the College Football Hitting the Book Show, talking all things college football from a betting perspective. And check out the college basketball version of the show this Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern as well. Until next time, class dismissed.